A powerful businessman decides to force his son to marry a humble woman in an agreement that defies all expectations. The heir is reluctant, while the young single mother accepts the sacrifice, thinking about her daughter's future. The millionaire was shocked by what happened after the wedding. The opulent ballroom of the Blackwood mansion buzzed with the chatter of New York's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, while waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. To an outsider, it was a scene of unparalleled luxury and refinement, but for Alexander Blackwood, it was just another suffocating reminder of the gilded cage he called home. At 28, Alexander was the sole heir to the Blackwood Empire, a sprawling conglomerate of tech companies and real estate holdings that had made his father, Richard Blackwood, one of the wealthiest men in America. Yet as he stood by the grand piano, nursing a glass of scotch, Alexander felt anything but privileged. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room, taking in the fake smiles and calculated gestures of the guests. He knew that behind every compliment and handshake lurked an agenda, a desire to curry favor with the Blackwood family. "Alex, there you are." His father's booming voice cut through the ambient noise, causing Alexander to stiffen involuntarily. Richard Blackwood approached, his imposing figure commanding attention from everyone in his vicinity. "I've been looking for you. Come, there's someone I want you to meet." Without waiting for a response, Richard clasped his son's shoulder, steering him towards a group of men in dark suits. Alexander allowed himself to be guided, years of conditioning kicking in as he plastered on a polite smile. He recognized most of the faces, board members, investors, and other captains of industry who orbited his father's world. "Gentlemen," Richard announced, "I believe you all know my son, Alexander. Alex, I'd like you to meet Mr. Zhao. He's just flown in from Shanghai to discuss a potential partnership with our tech division." Alexander extended his hand, reciting the pleasantries that had been drilled into him since childhood. As the conversation turned to market shares and profit margins, he felt his mind begin to wander. He'd heard variations of this discussion 1,000 times before, always with the same underlying message. One day, all of this would be his responsibility. The weight of that expectation pressed down on him, as tangible as the expensive watch on his wrist. A gift from his father on his last birthday, engraved with the words, "Time is money." Everything in Alexander's life seemed to revolve around the future his father had mapped out for him, a path that left no room for personal desires or individual growth. As the night wore on, Alexander found himself increasingly restless. He excused himself from yet another group of his father's associates and made his way to one of the balconies overlooking the sprawling gardens of the Blackwood estate. The cool night air was a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. Leaning against the ornate stone railing, Alexander loosened his tie and let out a deep sigh. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the world that existed beyond the walls of his gilded prison. He couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to walk those streets anonymously, free from the burden of the Blackwood name and all it entailed. "Hiding from the vultures," a familiar voice interrupted his reverie. Alexander turned to see his best friend, Michael Chen, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "Mike," Alexander greeted him with a genuine smile, the first one he'd worn all evening. "I thought you weren't going to make it." Michael shrugged, handing one of the glasses to Alexander. "And miss the chance to watch you squirm under Daddy's watchful eye." "Not a chance." His tone was light, but there was concern in his eyes as he studied his friend's face. "Rough night?" Alexander took a long sip of champagne before answering. "Same as always. Dad's parading me around like a prized stallion, making sure everyone knows who the heir apparent is." "And how does the heir apparent feel about that?" Michael asked, leaning against the railing beside him. For a moment, Alexander was silent, staring out at the manicured grounds below. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Trapped. Suffocated. Like I'm playing a part in someone else's story." He turned to Michael, a hint of desperation in his eyes. "Is it crazy that sometimes I think about just walking away from all of this?" Michael's expression softened. "It's not crazy, Alex. But we both know your father would never let that happen. The great Richard Blackwood always gets what he wants, right?" Before Alexander could respond, the balcony doors swung open, and Richard Blackwood's imposing figure filled the doorway. "There you are, Alexander. I've been looking everywhere for you. Mr. Zhao is about to leave, and it would be rude not to say goodbye. His gaze shifted to Michael, and his tone cooled noticeably. Mr. Chen, I wasn't aware you had arrived. I trust you're enjoying the party. Michael straightened, his easy demeanor replaced by a more formal posture. Yes, sir. Thank you for the invitation. It's a lovely event as always. Richard nodded curtly before turning his attention back to his son. Alexander, come along. We have important matters to discuss after the guests leave. With a resigned nod, Alexander drained the last of his champagne and set the glass aside. He shot an apologetic look at Michael before following his father back into the ballroom. As they walked, Richard leaned in close, his voice low and stern. I expect you to be more attentive to our guests, Alexander. These connections are vital for the future of our company, your future. It's time you started taking your responsibilities more seriously. Alexander bit back the retort that sprang to his lips, instead mumbling a quiet, Yes, father. As they approached Mr. Zhao and his entourage, he slipped back into the role of the perfect heir, smiling and shaking hands as if his entire world wasn't slowly crumbling around him. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and rehearsed small talk. By the time the last guest had departed, Alexander felt drained, both physically and emotionally. He longed for the solitude of his penthouse apartment in the city, but he knew his father wouldn't let him leave without having their important discussion. As the staff began cleaning up, Richard beckoned Alexander to follow him to his study. The room was a testament to the Blackwood legacy, with its dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, and oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Richard took his seat behind the massive mahogany desk, gesturing for Alexander to sit across from him. Son, Richard began, his tone uncharacteristically hesitant, I've been thinking a lot about your future, about the future of our family and our company. Alexander tensed, bracing himself for another lecture about responsibility and legacy. But what his father said next would change the course of his life forever. I believe it's time for you to prove that you're ready to take on a real leadership role in the company, Richard continued. And to do that, I think it's time you settled down, got married, started a family of your own. Alexander blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in conversation. Married? Father, I'm not even seeing anyone right now. And with all due respect, I don't see how my marital status affects my ability to lead the company. Richard leaned back in his chair, a calculated look in his eyes that made Alexander's blood run cold. That's why I've taken the liberty of arranging a suitable match for you. It's time you learned the value of real life, Alexander. And I have just the scenario in mind to teach you that lesson. As his father began to outline his plan, Alexander felt the last vestiges of control over his own life slipping away. Little did he know this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself, his family, and the true meaning of success. The harsh fluorescent lights of the diner flickered, casting an unflattering glow over the worn linoleum floor and chipped Formica tables. It was nearly midnight, and Olivia Martinez's feet ached as she wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day. The scent of grease and coffee clung to her uniform, a constant reminder of the long hours she'd put in. As she glanced at the clock, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. In just a few hours, she'd need to be up again to get her daughter Sophia ready for school before heading to her second job. But for now, all that mattered was finishing this shift and getting home to her sleeping child. "Hey, Liv!" called out Joey, the cook, from the kitchen. "You mind taking out the trash before you go? I got to get these dishes done if we're ever going to get out of here." Olivia suppressed a sigh and nodded. "Sure thing, Joey. I got it." She untied her apron and headed to the back, hefting the heavy garbage bags with a strength born of necessity. As she pushed open the back door with her hip, the cool night air hit her face, offering a brief respite from the stuffy diner. The alley behind the restaurant was dark and uninviting, but Olivia moved with purpose, her mind already on the quiet apartment where her daughter slept under the watchful eye of their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez. It wasn't an ideal situation, leaving Sophia alone at night, but Olivia had little choice. Single motherhood didn't leave much room for perfect solutions. As she tossed the bags into the dumpster, a flyer taped to the wall caught her eye. "Night classes. Earn your degree," it proclaimed in bold letters. Olivia paused, her heart tightening with a familiar mix of longing and frustration. How many times had she dreamed of going back to school, of building a better life for herself and Sophia? But dreams cost money. Money for tuition, for childcare, for books. Money she simply didn't have. With a shake of her head, Olivia turned away from the flyer and headed back inside. Dreams were a luxury she couldn't afford right now. Reality was about survival, about making sure there was food on the table and a roof over their heads. An hour later, Olivia quietly unlocked the door to her small apartment. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight, illuminating a space that was modest but meticulously clean. Toys were neatly stacked in a corner, and a child's drawings adorned the refrigerator. Small touches that transformed the tiny apartment into a home. Mrs. Gonzalez stirred on the couch, blinking sleepily as Olivia entered. "Oh, Olivia, you're back," she said, her voice warm with affection. Sophia was an angel, as always. She did all her homework and was in bed by 8. Olivia's face softened with a grateful smile. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Gonzalez. I don't know what I'd do without you." She reached into her purse, pulling out a few crumpled bills. "Here, for your trouble." The older woman waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense, child. Put that away. Looking after Sophia is a joy, not a job." She stood, gathering her shawl around her shoulders. "You work too hard, Olivia. You need to take care of yourself too." "I'm fine, really," Olivia insisted, though the dark circles under her eyes told a different story. "It's just been a busy week, that's all." Mrs. Gonzalez clucked her tongue disapprovingly, but didn't press the issue. As she made her way to the door, she paused, her expression turning serious. "Oh, I almost forgot. A letter came for you today." "I put it on the kitchen counter. It looked important, government seal and everything." Olivia's brow furrowed. "Government? I wonder what that could be about." A knot of anxiety formed in her stomach. In her experience, unexpected letters from the government rarely brought good news. After seeing Mrs. Gonzalez out, Olivia made her way to the kitchen. The envelope sat innocuously on the counter, its official seal seeming to mock her with its air of authority. With trembling fingers, she tore it open, her eyes scanning the contents. As she read, the color drained from her face. The letter was from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The apartment complex where she and Sophia lived was being sold to a private developer. In 6 months, all current tenants would need to vacate. Olivia sank into a kitchen chair, her mind reeling. This apartment, small as it was, had been their sanctuary for the past 5 years. It was where Sophia had taken her first steps, where they'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where they'd built a life together. And now, with a single letter, that stability was being ripped away. She glanced at the stack of bills on the table, each one a reminder of how precariously balanced their lives were. Finding a new apartment in New York City on her salary seemed impossible. The thought of uprooting Sophia, of possibly having to leave the city altogether, made her chest tighten with panic. Taking a deep breath, Olivia forced herself to calm down. Panic wouldn't solve anything. She'd faced challenges before, and she'd face this one too. Somehow she'd find a way to keep a roof over their heads. She had to, for Sophia's sake. As if summoned by her thoughts, a small voice called out from the bedroom. "Mommy, is that you?" Olivia quickly wiped away the tears that had begun to form and plastered on a smile. "Yes, baby, it's me. What are you doing up?" Sophia padded into the kitchen, her dark curls mussed from sleep, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. At 7 years old, she was the spitting image of Olivia, with the same warm brown eyes and determined set to her chin. "I heard the door. Did you bring me a cookie from the diner?" Olivia's heart clenched. In her distress over the letter, she'd forgotten the nightly ritual of bringing home a treat for Sophia. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I forgot tonight. But how about I make you some hot chocolate instead?" Sophia's face lit up, momentarily chasing away the shadows of worry that had settled over Olivia. As she busied herself with heating milk and stirring in cocoa powder, Olivia marveled at her daughter's resilience. Despite the long hours Olivia worked, despite the things they couldn't afford, Sophia remained a beacon of joy and optimism. "Mommy," Sophia said as she sipped her hot chocolate, a milk mustache forming on her upper lip. "Ms. Johnson says we're going on a field trip to the museum next month. Can I go?" Olivia hesitated, her mind automatically calculating the cost of the trip against their tight budget. But looking at Sophia's hopeful face, she couldn't bring herself to say no. The next morning dawned far too early for Olivia's liking. The few hours of sleep she'd managed to snatch were filled with restless dreams of eviction notices and homeless shelters. As she stood in the tiny kitchen, mechanically preparing Sophia's breakfast, the weight of their uncertain future pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Mummy, can you braid my hair today?" Sophia chirped, oblivious to her mother's distress as she bounced into the kitchen. "I want it to look pretty for picture day." Olivia's heart sank. Picture day, another expense she'd forgotten about. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, forcing a smile. "Come here, let's make you look extra special." As she wove Sophia's dark curls into a neat braid, Olivia's mind raced, trying to come up with a solution to their impending housing crisis. She'd have to pick up extra shifts at the diner, maybe look for a third job. The thought made her bones ache with exhaustion, but what choice did she have? "There you go, princess," Olivia said, tying off the braid with a ribbon. "You look beautiful." Sophia beamed, twirling in front of the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. "Thanks, Mummy. You're the best." The pure joy in her daughter's face steeled Olivia's resolve. She would find a way to make this work. She had to. After dropping Sophia off at school, Olivia headed to her morning job at a local coffee shop. The place was already bustling with the pre-work crowd, the air thick with the scent of espresso and pastries. "Liv, thank God you're here," her co-worker Jess called out as soon as she walked in. "The machine's acting up again and we've got a line out the door." Olivia nodded, quickly tying on her apron and getting to work. She lost herself in the rhythm of taking orders and making drinks, grateful for the distraction from her worries. It wasn't until the morning rush died down that she allowed herself a moment to breathe. "Rough night?" Jess asked, eyeing the dark circles under Olivia's eyes. Olivia sighed, leaning against the counter. "You could say that. Got some bad news about my apartment. We're being evicted in 6 months. Jess's eyes widened. "Oh, Liv, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Olivia admitted, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "I've been trying to figure it out, but—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "I'll think of something. I have to." Before Jess could respond, the bell over the door chimed. Olivia straightened up, plastering on her customer service smile. "Welcome to the daily grind. What can I get for you today?" The man who had entered was clearly out of place in the modest coffee shop. His tailored suit probably cost more than Olivia made in a month, and his polished shoes gleamed under the fluorescent lights. But it was his eyes that caught Olivia's attention, sharp and calculating, taking in every detail of his surroundings. "Just a black coffee, please," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. As Olivia rang up his order, the man's gaze settled on her, a hint of curiosity in his expression. "Pardon me, but are you Olivia Martinez?" Olivia froze, her hand hovering over the register. "Yes, that's me. Do I know you?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting before. My name is Richard Blackwood. I was hoping we might have a word in private. It's a matter of some importance." Olivia's mind raced. The name Blackwood was familiar. She'd seen it in the news, associated with one of the biggest companies in the city. What could someone like that possibly want with her? "I'm working right now," she said cautiously. "I can't just leave." Richard Blackwood waved a hand dismissively. "I'm sure your manager would be happy to give you a short break. This won't take long and it could be very beneficial for you." Olivia glanced at Jess, who nodded encouragingly, clearly intrigued by the mysterious visitor. With a sigh, Olivia untied her apron. "All right, Mr. Blackwood. I can spare a few minutes." They settled at a small table in the corner of the shop, away from prying ears. Richard Blackwood took a sip of his coffee before speaking, his gaze never leaving Olivia's face. "Ms. Martinez, I'll be direct. I have a proposition for you, one that could solve all your financial problems and secure a bright future for your daughter." Olivia's back stiffened. "How do you know about my daughter?" "I make it my business to know things, Ms. Martinez. I know about your 2 jobs, your struggle to make ends meet. I know about the eviction notice you received yesterday." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. "What is this? Are you threatening me?" Richard Blackwood held up a hand, his expression softening slightly. "Not at all. I'm offering you an opportunity. A chance to give your daughter the life you've always dreamed of for her." Despite her misgivings, Olivia found herself leaning in. "I'm listening." "It's quite simple, really," Richard continued. "I want you to marry my son, Alexander." For a moment, Olivia was sure she had misheard. Excuse me? You heard correctly. I'm proposing an arranged marriage between you and my son. In return, you and your daughter will want for nothing. The best schools, the finest healthcare, a home in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, all of it would be yours. Olivia's mind reeled. This had to be some kind of joke. Why? Why me? Why would you want your son to marry someone like me? Richard's smile tightened. My reasons are my own. Let's just say that I believe this arrangement would be educational for Alexander and highly beneficial for you and your daughter. Olivia shook her head, pushing her chair back. This is insane. I'm not for sale, Mr. Blackwood, and neither is my daughter's future. As she stood to leave, Richard's voice stopped her. Don't be hasty, Ms. Martinez. Think about what this could mean for Sophia. No more struggling to make rent. No more worrying about how to afford her school supplies or doctor's visits. You could give her everything you never had. Olivia hesitated, her resolve wavering. The thought of Sophia, of the life she could provide for her daughter, was tempting. But at what cost? I'll give you some time to think it over, Richard said, sliding a business card across the table. Call me when you're ready to discuss the details. But don't wait too long, an opportunity like this won't come again. As Richard Blackwood walked out of the coffee shop, Olivia sank back into her chair, her head spinning. The business card seemed to burn in her hand, a symbol of an impossible choice. Could she really consider such an outrageous proposal? The thought of marrying a stranger, of becoming part of the world of the ultra-wealthy, was terrifying. But as she thought of Sophia, of the eviction notice waiting at home, of the constant struggle just to keep their heads above water, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, "Can you afford not to?" Alexander Blackwood stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment. The New York skyline spread out before him like a glittering carpet. In one hand he held a glass of scotch, in the other, his father's latest ultimatum. The words on the paper seemed to mock him, each sentence another link in the chain his father was forging around his life. A wife, he muttered, tossing back the remainder of his drink. He can't be serious. But Alexander knew better. Richard Blackwood was always serious, especially when it came to controlling his son's life. This latest scheme, an arranged marriage to some unknown woman, was just another move in the elaborate chess game his father seemed determined to play. With a frustrated growl, Alexander crumpled the paper and threw it across the room. It bounced off an abstract painting worth more than most people made in a year, a stark reminder of the gilded cage he lived in. A soft knock at the door interrupted his brooding. "Mr. Blackwood," his assistant's voice called out, "your father is on line 1. He says it's urgent." Alexander closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to compose himself. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll take it in here." Steeling himself, he picked up the phone. "Father," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Alexander," Richard's voice boomed through the speaker, "I trust you've had time to consider my proposal." "Proposal?" Alexander scoffed. "You mean your latest attempt to micromanage my life?" "Yes, I've read it." "And the answer is no." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Alexander could almost see his father's face hardening into the stern mask he wore whenever he was displeased. "This isn't a request, Alexander. It's time you learned what it means to have real responsibilities, to care for someone other than yourself. By marrying a complete stranger?" Alexander shot back. "How is that supposed to teach me anything?" "You'll meet her tomorrow," Richard continued as if Alexander hadn't spoken. "I've arranged a dinner at Le Bernardin. 8 o'clock sharp. Don't be late." Before Alexander could protest further, the line went dead. He stared at the phone in disbelief, anger bubbling up inside him. How dare his father try to orchestrate his life like this? He was a grown man, not some pawn to be moved around at will. For a wild moment, Alexander considered not showing up to the dinner, defying his father's orders outright. But he knew it would be futile. Richard Blackwood always got what he wanted, one way or another. With a resigned sigh, Alexander poured himself another drink. Tomorrow would be interesting, to say the least. The next evening found Alexander seated at a secluded table in Le Bernardin, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants. The soft lighting and hushed conversations of other diners did little to soothe his frayed nerves. He checked his watch for the third time in as many minutes, wondering if this mystery woman would even show up. Just as he was considering making his escape, a figure approached the table. Alexander looked up, and for a moment, all thoughts of rebellion fled his mind. Olivia Martinez stood before him, looking as uncomfortable as he felt. She wore a simple black dress that spoke of borrowed finery, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant twist. But it was her eyes that caught Alexander's attention, warm brown orbs filled with a mixture of determination and uncertainty. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice softer than he'd expected. "I'm Olivia Martinez." Alexander stood, his ingrained manners taking over. "Please call me Alexander," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I suppose we should dispense with formalities given the unusual circumstances." Olivia nodded, taking her seat with a grace that belied her obvious discomfort. "This is certainly not how I imagined spending my evening," she admitted, a hint of humor in her tone. Despite himself, Alexander felt a smile tugging at his lips. "I think we can agree on that," he said, signaling the waiter. "Shall we order some wine? I have a feeling we're both going to need it." As they perused the menus, an awkward silence settled over the table. Alexander found himself stealing glances at Olivia, trying to reconcile this real woman with the faceless pawn he'd imagined in his father's game. "So," he said finally after they'd placed their orders, "I suppose we should address the elephant in the room. My father's ridiculous proposal." Olivia's fingers tightened around her water glass. "Mr. Blackwood, Alexander, I want you to know that I didn't seek this out. Your father approached me out of the blue with this arrangement." "I believe you," Alexander said, surprising himself with his sincerity. "My father has a talent for blindsiding people. I'm sorry you've been dragged into his machinations." Olivia's shoulders relaxed slightly at his words. "Can I ask you something?" At Alexander's nod, she continued, "Why is your father so set on this? On you getting married?" Alexander let out a humorless laugh. "Control," he said simply. "It's always about control with him. He thinks by forcing me into this marriage, he can mold me into the perfect heir he's always wanted." "And what do you want?" Olivia asked, her gaze direct and unflinching. The question caught Alexander off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked him that? I'm not sure," he admitted. "I've spent so long trying to live up to my father's expectations that I'm not sure I know who I am without them." Something softened in Olivia's expression. "I can't imagine what that must be like," she said, "to have your whole life planned out for you." "What about you?" Alexander asked, genuinely curious. "Why did you agree to this dinner?" Olivia was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. "I have a daughter," she said finally. "Sophia. She's 7, and she's everything to me. Your father's offer, it would mean security for her, a future I could never provide on my own." The raw honesty in her voice struck a chord in Alexander. For the first time, he began to see beyond his own resentment, to understand the impossible position this woman had been put in. "Tell me about her," he said softly. "About Sophia." As Olivia began to speak, her face lighting up with love for her daughter, Alexander found himself drawn in. He listened as she described Sophia's passion for drawing, her struggle with math, her dream of becoming a veterinarian. With each word, the abstract concept of this arranged marriage became more real, more human. Their food arrived, but neither paid much attention to the exquisite dishes before them. They were too engrossed in conversation, discovering unexpected common ground despite their vastly different backgrounds. As the evening drew to a close, Alexander found himself reluctant to leave. This dinner, which he dreaded all day, had turned out to be surprisingly pleasant. "Olivia," he said as they stood to leave, "I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. This situation, it's not fair to either of us, but I'm glad I got to meet you tonight." Olivia smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "I feel the same way, Alexander. Whatever happens next, I'm glad we had this chance to talk." As they parted ways outside the restaurant, Alexander watched Olivia disappear into a waiting taxi. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He was still angry at his father, still resentful of the control being exerted over his life, but now there was something else too. A spark of curiosity, a hint of possibility. For the first time in years, Alexander felt the stirring of something new, something that, despite his best efforts, felt dangerously like hope. The early morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Olivia's tiny apartment, casting a warm glow over the cluttered living room. Sophia sat at the kitchen table, happily munching on cereal and chattering about her upcoming school day. Olivia listened with half an ear, her mind still swirling with thoughts of the previous night's dinner. "Mummy, are you listening?" Sophia's voice cut through her reverie. "I said Miss Johnson is going to announce who gets to be in the school play today." Olivia blinked, forcing herself to focus on her daughter. "Of course, sweetie, I'm sorry, that's so exciting. I'm sure you'll get a great part." As Sophia launched into a detailed description of the role she hoped to get, Olivia's gaze drifted to the business card sitting on the counter. Richard Blackwood's contact information seemed to mock her, a tangible reminder of the impossible decision she faced. The dinner with Alexander had not gone at all as she'd expected. She'd braced herself for an arrogant, entitled man, someone who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. Instead, she'd met someone who seemed just as trapped as she was, albeit in a very different kind of cage. "Mommy, we're going to be late." Sophia's urgent tone snapped Olivia back to the present. With a start, she realized the time and hurried to gather Sophia's backpack and lunchbox. As they rushed out the door, Olivia's neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez, was just leaving her apartment. "Olivia, dear," she called out, "don't forget, the super said they're shutting off the hot water for repairs today. Make sure you fill up some pots before you leave for work." Olivia groaned inwardly. Another inconvenience, another reminder of the precarious nature of their living situation. As she ushered Sophia down the stairs, her mind couldn't help but wander to the life Alexander Blackwood could offer. A life without constant worries about basic necessities. Across town, Alexander was facing his own internal struggle. He sat in his father's opulent office, the New York skyline sprawling behind Richard Blackwood's imposing figure. "Well," Richard's voice was sharp, impatient. "What did you think of Ms. Martinez?" Alexander chose his words carefully. "She seems nice, genuine, not at all what I expected." A hint of a smile played at the corners of Richard's mouth. "And her daughter, did she mention Sophia?" "She did," Alexander admitted, a note of suspicion creeping into his voice. "Father, what's this really about? Why are you so invested in this particular woman?" Richard leaned back in his chair, regarding his son with an inscrutable expression. "Let's just say I see potential in her, in both of them. The question is, do you?" Alexander bristled at his father's tone. "This isn't about potential. It's about you trying to control my life as usual." "Control?" Richard's voice hardened. "This is about responsibility, Alexander. About learning what it means to put someone else's needs before your own. Something you've never had to do in your life." The words stung, more than Alexander cared to admit. "And you think forcing me into a marriage with a stranger is going to teach me that?" Richard stood, moving to the window. "Sometimes, son, the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected places. I'm offering you a chance to grow, to become the man I know you can be." Alexander scoffed, rising from his chair. "Save the platitudes, father. We both know this is just another one of your games." As he turned to leave, Richard's voice stopped him. "Think carefully about your next move, Alexander. The board is set, and there's more at stake here than you realize." The cryptic warning followed Alexander as he left the office, his mind a tumult of conflicting emotions. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't shake the memory of Olivia's warm brown eyes, the way her face lit up when she spoke about her daughter. Later that afternoon, Olivia found herself in the break room of the diner, staring at her phone. Richard Blackwood's number seemed to taunt her, daring her to make a decision. "Earth to live!" Jess's voice broke through her thoughts. "You've been staring at that phone for 10 minutes. Hot date?" Olivia managed a weak smile. "Not exactly, just a big decision." Jess plopped down in the chair across from her, concern etched on her face. "Want to talk about it?" For a moment, Olivia was tempted to confide in her friend, to spill out all the confusion and fear swirling inside her. But how could she possibly explain the bizarre situation she found herself in? "It's complicated," she said finally. "I've been offered an opportunity. Something that could change everything for me and Sophia. But I'm not sure if the cost is too high." Jess reached across the table, squeezing Olivia's hand. "Liv, I've known you for years. You're the strongest, most dedicated mother I've ever met. Whatever this opportunity is, I know you'll make the right choice for you and your girl." Olivia felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "But what if I don't know what the right choice is?" "Then you trust your gut," Jess said simply. "And remember that you're not alone. Whatever you decide, you've got people in your corner." The words of encouragement buoyed Olivia's spirit, giving her the courage to do what she'd been avoiding all day. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone and dialed Richard Blackwood's number. As the phone rang, Olivia's mind raced. Was she really considering this? Could she truly contemplate marrying a man she barely knew, becoming part of a world so far removed from her own? But then she thought of Sophia, of the opportunities this could provide for her daughter. A good education, financial security, a chance at a life Olivia had only dreamed of giving her. "Mr. Blackwood's office," a crisp voice answered. "How may I direct your call?" Olivia swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper as she replied, "This is Olivia Martinez. I'd like to speak with Mr. Blackwood about his proposal." As she was put on hold, Olivia closed her eyes, silently praying she was making the right decision. For better or worse, she was about to step onto a path that would change her life forever. Across the city, Alexander found himself standing outside a small elementary school, watching as children poured out of the building, their excited voices filling the air. He wasn't entirely sure what had driven him here, but something about his conversation with Olivia the night before had struck a chord. As he scanned the crowd of children, a small figure caught his eye. A little girl with dark curls clutching a colorful backpack, her face lit up with a smile that was achingly familiar. Sophia. Alexander felt his breath catch in his throat. This was Olivia's daughter, the child at the center of this whole bizarre situation. As he watched her skip down the steps, chatting animatedly with a friend, he was struck by a sudden overwhelming realization. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't even just about Olivia. There was an innocent child involved, a little girl whose entire future could be shaped by the decisions they made. For the first time in his life, Alexander Blackwood felt the weight of true responsibility settling on his shoulders, and as he turned away from the school, his mind made up. He knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The weeks that followed Olivia's phone call to Richard Blackwood passed in a whirlwind of activity. Meetings with lawyers, discussions of prenuptial agreements, and hurried explanations to friends and family blurred together in a surreal haze. Before Olivia knew it, she found herself standing in front of a judge at City Hall, exchanging vows with a man she barely knew. The ceremony was brief and perfunctory, devoid of the romance and celebration Olivia had once dreamed of. Alexander stood beside her, his face a mask of calm determination, while Richard Blackwood watched from the sidelines, a satisfied gleam in his eyes. As the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Olivia felt a momentary panic. What had she done? How could she have agreed to this madness? But then she thought of Sophia, of the future she was securing for her daughter, and steeled her resolve. This was about more than just her. It was about giving Sophia opportunities she would never have had otherwise. "Are you ready?" Alexander's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood beside her, hand extended, a tentative smile on his face. Olivia took a deep breath and nodded, placing her hand in his. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, managing a small smile of her own. As they exited City Hall, they were greeted by a sleek black limousine. The driver opened the door, revealing an interior that probably cost more than everything Olivia owned combined. "Your chariot awaits," Alexander said, a hint of irony in his voice. As they settled into the plush leather seats, an awkward silence fell between them. Olivia fidgeted with her simple gold wedding band, still not quite believing it was real. "So," Alexander said finally, "I suppose we should discuss living arrangements." Olivia nodded, grateful for the practical topic. "Yes, I need to give notice at my apartment, and there's Sophia's school to consider. She's in the middle of the semester, and I don't want to disrupt her education." Alexander's expression softened at the mention of Sophia. "Of course. I've been thinking about that, actually. I have a penthouse in the Upper East Side. It's close to some of the best schools in the city. We could look into transferring Sophia there for the next term." Olivia blinked, taken aback by his thoughtfulness. "That's very kind of you, Alexander. But are you sure you're ready for a child in your home? This is a big adjustment for all of us." Alexander was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "To be honest, I'm not sure I'm ready for any of this. But I made a commitment and I intend to honor it. Sophia is part of the package, and I want to make sure she's comfortable and taken care of." Olivia felt a surge of gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot to me." As the limousine wound its way through the busy New York streets, Olivia's mind raced with all the changes that lay ahead. How would Sophia react to their new living situation? How would she explain this sudden marriage to her daughter? "Olivia," Alexander's voice interrupted her thoughts. "There's something I want you to know. I know this isn't a conventional marriage, and I know we're both doing this for our own reasons. But I want you to understand that I take this commitment seriously. I'll do my best to be a good partner to you and a good stepfather to Sophia." Olivia felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "I appreciate that, Alexander, and I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work too, for all our sakes." The limousine pulled up in front of a towering apartment building, all glass and steel reaching towards the sky. As they stepped out onto the sidewalk, Olivia couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the grandeur of it all. "Welcome home," Alexander said, a hint of nervousness in his voice. As they rode the elevator to the penthouse, Olivia's heart raced. This was it, the beginning of her new life, a life she never could have imagined just a few short weeks ago. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, revealing a space that took Olivia's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while sleek modern furniture and priceless artwork adorned the spacious living area. "This is incredible," Olivia breathed, taking in the luxurious surroundings. Alexander shrugged, looking slightly uncomfortable. "It's just a place, but I hope you and Sophia will be comfortable here." As he gave her a tour of the penthouse, pointing out the various rooms and amenities, Olivia couldn't help but notice how impersonal it all felt. There were no family photos, no personal touches that spoke of a life lived within these walls. "You can decorate however you like," Alexander said, as if reading her thoughts. "I want you and Sophia to feel at home here." Olivia nodded, grateful for his consideration. "Thank you. I'm sure Sophia will be excited to put up her drawings and choose colors for her new room." At the mention of Sophia, Alexander's expression grew serious. "When do you want to tell her about all of this?" Olivia sighed, the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders once more. "I suppose we should do it as soon as possible. She'll be confused enough as it is. The longer we wait, the harder it will be." Alexander nodded, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. Would you like me to be there when you tell her?" The offer surprised Olivia. "Are you sure? It might be easier if I explain things to her on my own first." "This affects all of us," Alexander said firmly. "If we're going to make this work, we need to start acting like a family, even if it's not a conventional one." Olivia felt a rush of warmth at his words. Maybe, just maybe, this arrangement could work out after all. Later that evening, Olivia sat in her old apartment, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of the home she had built for herself and Sophia. In a few days, this would all be packed up, moved to a new life of luxury she still couldn't quite comprehend. The sound of a key in the lock made her heart race. This was it, the moment she had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. "Mommy!" Sophia's excited voice filled the small apartment as she burst through the door, Mrs. Gonzalez following close behind. "Guess what? I got the lead in the school play." Olivia forced a smile, trying to match her daughter's enthusiasm. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." As Sophia launched into a detailed description of her role, Olivia caught Mrs. Gonzalez's questioning gaze. She had told her neighbor that she had some big news to share, but hadn't gone into details. "Sophia, honey," Olivia interrupted gently. "There's someone I'd like you to meet. He's waiting for us downstairs." Sophia's eyes widened with curiosity. "Who is it, Mommy? Is it a surprise?" Olivia took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "It's a very big surprise, sweetie. Come on, let's go down together." As they descended the stairs, Olivia's mind raced, trying to find the right words to explain this life-altering change to her 7-year-old daughter. How could she possibly make Sophia understand a decision that she herself was still struggling to come to terms with? Alexander was waiting in the lobby, looking uncharacteristically nervous in his tailored suit. When he saw Sophia, a smile spread across his face, genuine and warm. "Hello, Sophia," he said, kneeling down to her level. "I'm Alexander. I'm a friend of your mum's." Sophia looked up at Olivia, confusion evident in her big brown eyes. "Mommy? What's going on?" Olivia knelt beside her daughter, taking her small hands in her own. "Sweetheart, remember how we talked about how sometimes grown-ups can surprise us? Well, I have a very big surprise for you. Alexander and we got married today. Sophia's eyes widened, darting between Olivia and Alexander. Married? Like in the movies? Alexander chuckled softly. Not quite like in the movies, but yes, we're married. And that means some big changes for all of us. As Olivia began to explain their new living situation, she watched Sophia's face carefully, trying to gauge her reaction. There was confusion there, certainly, but also a glimmer of excitement at the prospect of a new home, a new school, a new life. Does this mean Alexander is my daddy now? Sophia asked suddenly, her innocent question cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Olivia felt her breath catch in her throat, but before she could respond, Alexander spoke up. I would be honored to be a part of your life, Sophia, he said gently, but I know I can't replace your real dad. How about we start as friends and see where it goes from there? Sophia considered this for a moment, then nodded solemnly. Okay. Can I see our new house now? Olivia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It wouldn't all be this easy, she knew. There would be challenges and adjustments ahead, but for now, in this moment, she allowed herself to hope. As they left the old apartment building, Sophia's small hand in hers and Alexander by her side, Olivia felt a strange mix of emotions wash over her. Fear, uncertainty, and hope all swirled together as they stepped into the waiting limousine and towards their new life. The old chapter of her life was closing, but a new one was just beginning. And despite the unconventional circumstances, Olivia found herself looking forward to what the future might hold. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting a warm glow over the unfamiliar surroundings. Olivia blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the luxurious bedroom she found herself in. It took a few seconds for reality to settle in. This was her new home, her new life. She glanced at the other side of the king-sized bed, half expecting to see Alexander there, but the sheets were undisturbed. They had agreed to separate bedrooms for now, a decision that brought both relief and a twinge of something she couldn't quite name. The sound of muffled giggles from down the hall brought a smile to Olivia's face. Sophia, at least, seemed to be adapting quickly to their new surroundings. The little girl had been wide-eyed with wonder as they'd explored the penthouse the night before, exclaiming over every new discovery. Wrapping herself in a plush robe that probably cost more than her old month's rent, Olivia padded down the hallway. She paused outside Sophia's new room, listening to the animated chatter coming from within. And then the princess realized she didn't need the prince to save her because she was strong all on her own. Olivia's heart swelled at the sound of her daughter's voice, so full of imagination and joy. But it was the responding chuckle that made her pause. That's a great story, Sophia. I like that the princess saved herself. Very modern. Alexander's voice, warm and genuinely engaged, was a surprise. Olivia peered around the doorframe to see her new husband sitting cross-legged on the floor of Sophia's room, surrounded by stuffed animals and halfway through what appeared to be an elaborate tea party. "Mommy!" Sophia exclaimed, spotting her in the doorway. "Come join our tea party. Alexander makes funny voices for all the animals." Alexander looked up, a slight flush coloring his cheeks as he met Olivia's gaze. "Good morning," he said, a touch of embarrassment in his tone. "I hope we didn't wake you. Sophia was up early, and I thought—" Olivia shook her head, smiling as she entered the room. "Not at all. This looks like fun." She settled down next to Sophia, accepting a plastic teacup from her daughter. "So what voices does Mr. Bunny have?" As Alexander launched into a comically gruff voice for the stuffed rabbit, Olivia felt a warm glow of contentment. This wasn't at all what she had expected from their new living arrangement, but seeing Alexander make an effort with Sophia meant more to her than she could express. The rest of the morning passed in a whirlwind of activity. There were boxes to unpack, new routines to establish, and 1,000 little details to sort out. Olivia found herself constantly amazed by the luxuries of their new home, from the state-of-the-art kitchen appliances to the marble-tiled bathrooms. "I've arranged for a car to take Sophia to school," Alexander said, over a late breakfast of fresh fruit and pastries. "The driver is very experienced and has all the necessary security clearances. I thought it might be easier than trying to navigate public transportation from here." Olivia nodded, grateful for his thoughtfulness, but also feeling a pang of guilt. That's very kind, but you don't have to go to so much trouble. We're used to taking the subway. Alexander's expression grew serious. Olivia, I know this is all new and probably overwhelming, but please understand, you and Sophia are my family now. Your comfort and safety are important to me. The sincerity in his voice caught Olivia off guard. She had expected a cold, businesslike approach to their arrangement, but Alexander's genuine concern was touching. Thank you, she said softly. We appreciate it, really. As they finished breakfast, Alexander glanced at his watch. I have to head to the office. There's a board meeting this afternoon that I can't miss. Will you be all right here? Olivia nodded, trying to project more confidence than she felt. Of course. I have plenty to keep me busy with unpacking and getting Sophia settled. Alexander hesitated for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek credit card. This is for you, he said, sliding it across the table. For any expenses you might have, groceries, clothes, anything you or Sophia might need. Olivia stared at the card, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Part of her wanted to refuse, to insist that she could take care of herself and Sophia as she always had. But she knew that was pride talking. This was part of their agreement, part of the new life she had chosen for her daughter's sake. Thank you, she said, picking up the card. I'll use it responsibly. Alexander's lips quirked in a small smile. I know you will. That's not a concern. He stood, straightening his tie. I'll try to be home for dinner if that's all right. Olivia nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest at the idea of a family dinner. We'd like that. After Alexander left, Olivia found herself wandering through the penthouse, still in awe of its size and luxury. She paused in front of a framed photograph on the wall, a younger Alexander with his parents, at what looked like a charity gala. The stiff postures and formal smiles spoke volumes about the family dynamics. Mommy? Sophia's voice broke through her thoughts. Can we go to the park today? The one we saw from the car yesterday? Olivia smiled, pushing aside her musings about her new husband's past. Of course, sweetheart. Let's go explore our new neighborhood. The rest of the day passed in a blur of new experiences. The nearby park was a far cry from the crowded playgrounds of their old neighborhood, with manicured lawns and a state-of-the-art playground. Sophia made fast friends with a group of children, while Olivia found herself chatting with their nannies and mothers, women whose designer clothes and perfectly coiffed hair made her acutely aware of her own simple attire. As they walked home, hand in hand, Sophia chatted excitedly about her new friends and the upcoming school year. Olivia listened with half an ear, her mind racing with all the changes they would need to navigate. New schools, new social circles, new expectations. It was all a bit overwhelming. Back at the penthouse, Olivia busied herself with preparing dinner. She had insisted on cooking herself, despite Alexander's offer to hire a chef. The familiar routine of chopping vegetables and stirring pots was soothing, a small piece of normalcy in their new, extraordinary circumstances. The sound of the elevator arriving announced Alexander's return. Olivia felt a flutter of nerves as she heard his footsteps approaching the kitchen. Something smells wonderful, he said, appearing in the doorway. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than she had seen him yet. It's just a simple pasta dish, Olivia said, suddenly self-conscious. I hope that's okay. Alexander's smile was warm and genuine. It's perfect. Can I help with anything? Soon they fell into an easy rhythm, with Alexander setting the table while Olivia finished the meal. Sophia bounded in, excited to share her day's adventures with her new stepfather. As they sat down to eat, Olivia was struck by how normal it all felt. The conversation flowed easily, with Sophia dominating much of it, with her enthusiastic recounting of their park adventure. Alexander listened attentively, asking questions and seeming genuinely interested in the little girl's experiences. I was thinking, Alexander said as they were finishing up, if you're both free this weekend, maybe we could take a trip to the Bronx Zoo. I haven't been since I was a kid, but I remember loving it. Sophia's eyes lit up. Really? Can we see the penguins? And the lions? Alexander chuckled. We can see all the animals you want. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat as she watched the interaction. This wasn't at all what she had expected when she agreed to this arrangement. She had prepared herself for cold politeness, for going through the motions of family life. But the warmth and genuine effort Alexander was putting in caught her completely off guard. Later that night, After Sophia had been tucked in and Alexander had retreated to his home office to finish some work, Olivia found herself on the balcony, looking out over the glittering city skyline. The events of the past few weeks felt like a dream. How had she gone from worrying about making rent to living in a luxury penthouse with a man she barely knew? "Penny for your thoughts." Alexander's voice startled her out of her reverie. Olivia turned to see him leaning against the doorframe, his expression curious and a little concerned. "I was just thinking about how surreal all of this is," she admitted. "A few weeks ago I was worried about how I was going to afford Sophia's school supplies. And now." Alexander moved to stand beside her, his gaze following hers out to the city. "I know this isn't a conventional situation," he said softly, "and I know we're both still figuring things out. But I want you to know that I meant what I said before. You and Sophia are my family now, and I'm committed to making this work." Olivia felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means more than you know." As they stood there in companionable silence, looking out over the city that had brought them together in such an unexpected way, Olivia felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't the life she had imagined for herself, but maybe, just maybe, it could be something even better. The road ahead would be challenging, she knew. There were still so many unknowns, so many potential pitfalls, but for the first time since this whirlwind began, Olivia felt truly optimistic about the future. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family. The sleek boardroom of Blackwood Enterprises buzzed with the low murmur of conversation as executives in tailored suits shuffled papers and checked their phones. Alexander Blackwood sat at the head of the long table, his father Richard occupying the seat to his right. To an outsider, it was a picture of corporate success and family legacy. But as Alexander half listened to the CFO's droning report on quarterly earnings, his mind was elsewhere. He found himself thinking about the drawing Sophia had proudly presented to him that morning, a colorful depiction of their planned trip to the zoo, complete with a stick figure Alexander holding hands with Sophia and Olivia. "Alexander," his father's sharp voice cut through his reverie. "Do you have any thoughts on the proposed acquisition?" Alexander blinked, quickly refocusing on the matter at hand. "Yes, of course," he said smoothly, years of boardroom training kicking in. "While the numbers look promising, I think we need to consider the potential impact on our existing supply chain. Perhaps a more thorough analysis of the long-term implications would be prudent." Richard nodded approvingly, but Alexander caught the slight narrowing of his father's eyes. He knew that look. It meant a private conversation was in his future. Sure enough, as the meeting adjourned and executives filed out of the room, Richard placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder. "A word in my office, son." As they settled into the opulent corner office with its sweeping views of the city, Richard fixed Alexander with a penetrating stare. "You seemed distracted today. Is everything all right?" Alexander hesitated, unsure how to explain the tumult of emotions he'd been experiencing lately. "Everything's fine, Father. Just adjusting to the new living arrangements, that's all." Richard's expression softened slightly. "Ah, yes. How are things with Ms. Martinez and her daughter? Any issues I should be aware of?" The protective surge Alexander felt at the mention of Olivia and Sophia caught him off guard. "No issues," he said firmly. "They're settling in well. Olivia she's not what I expected." A knowing smile played at the corners of Richard's mouth. "Oh? And what did you expect?" Alexander shrugged, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "I'm not sure. Someone after my money, I suppose. But she's different, genuine. And Sophia is a wonderful child. I'm glad to hear it," Richard said, leaning back in his chair. "But remember, Alexander, this arrangement has a purpose. Don't lose sight of why we're doing this." The words hit Alexander like a splash of cold water, reminding him of the calculated nature of his marriage. "And what purpose is that, exactly?" he found himself asking, a hint of challenge in his voice. "You still haven't fully explained your motives in all this." Richard's expression hardened. "My motives are to secure the future of this company, your future. This experience is meant to teach you about responsibility, about thinking beyond yourself. The sooner you embrace that lesson, the better." As Alexander left his father's office, he felt a familiar mix of frustration and resentment bubbling up inside him. But there was something else too. a growing certainty that the lesson his father intended was having unintended consequences. Later that afternoon, Alexander found himself in a part of the city he rarely visited, the neighborhood where Olivia and Sophia had lived before their marriage. He had left the office early, telling his assistant he had a personal matter to attend to. In truth, he wasn't entirely sure why he was here. As he walked the bustling streets, taking in the small bodegas, crowded apartment buildings, and lively community gardens, Alexander felt like he was seeing a whole different world. This was so far removed from the sleek, sanitized version of New York he was used to. A colorful mural caught his eye, a vibrant depiction of diverse faces coming together to form a heart. The words, "Community is family," were painted across the top in bold letters. Alexander found himself staring at it, struck by the raw emotion and sense of connection it conveyed. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" a voice beside him said. Alexander turned to see an elderly woman smiling up at him. "The local kids painted that last summer. Brings a bit of light to the neighborhood." Alexander nodded, suddenly aware of how out of place he must look in his expensive suit. "It's very impressive. The sense of community here seems strong." The woman's eyes crinkled as she smiled. "Oh, it is. We look out for each other here. Have to, in a city like this." "You visiting someone in the area?" "Not exactly," Alexander said, hesitating before adding, My wife used to live around here. I was curious about the neighborhood." "Oh, how lovely," the woman said. "Well, I hope she's shown you all the best spots. There's a little cafe just around the corner that makes the most amazing empanadas. And the community center down the street does wonderful programs for children." As the woman chatted, pointing out various landmarks and sharing neighborhood stories, Alexander felt a strange ache in his chest. This was the world Olivia and Sophia had come from, a world of tight-knit communities, of people supporting each other through hard times. It was so different from the cold, competitive environment he'd grown up in. Thanking the woman for her time, Alexander continued his walk, his mind whirling with new perspectives. He found himself noticing things he might have overlooked before. The laughter of children playing in a small park, the warm greetings exchanged between neighbors, the sense of life and vibrancy that seemed to pulse through the streets. As he passed a small bookstore, a display in the window caught his eye. It was a collection of children's books, colorfully illustrated stories about families of all kinds. Without really thinking about it, Alexander went inside and purchased several, including one about a little girl adjusting to life with a new stepfather. By the time he headed home, Alexander's arms were full of purchases, not just the books, but also a set of art supplies he thought Sophia might like, and a beautiful hand-woven shawl he'd found in a small boutique that reminded him of Olivia. As the elevator doors opened into the penthouse, Alexander was greeted by the sound of laughter and the smell of something delicious cooking. He found Olivia and Sophia in the kitchen, flour dusting their cheeks as they worked together to roll out pizza dough. "Alexander!" Sophia exclaimed, her face lighting up. "You're home early. We're making pizza." Olivia looked up, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Hey, you're just in time to help with toppings. If you want to, that is." For a moment, Alexander was struck by the domestic scene before him. It was so far removed from the cold, formal dinners of his childhood, or the lonely takeout meals he'd grown accustomed to as an adult. The warmth and joy radiating from Olivia and Sophia was almost palpable. "I'd love to help," he said, setting down his purchases and rolling up his sleeves. "But first, I have some things for you both." As he presented the gifts, the art supplies for Sophia and the shawl for Olivia, Alexander was unprepared for the rush of emotion he felt at their genuine excitement and gratitude. Sophia immediately wanted to try out her new colored pencils, while Olivia wrapped the shawl around her shoulders, her eyes shining with appreciation. "These are so thoughtful, Alexander," Olivia said softly. "Thank you." As they worked together to finish the pizzas, chatting and laughing, Alexander felt something shift inside him. This wasn't the life he had envisioned for himself, but he was starting to realize it might be exactly what he needed. Later that night, after Sophia had been tucked in and Olivia had retired to her room, Alexander found himself on the balcony, nursing a glass of scotch and looking out over the city. The lights twinkled below, but instead of seeing the usual landscape of power and ambition, he found himself thinking about the communities hidden within, the families, the struggles, the moments of joy and connection. He thought about his father's words, about responsibility and thinking beyond himself. But the lesson he was learning wasn't the one Richard had intended. It wasn't about power or control or living up to the Blackwood name. It was about connection, about finding meaning in the small moments, about what it truly meant to be part of a family. As he sipped his drink, Alexander made a decision. He would continue to fulfill his duties at Blackwood Enterprises, but he would no longer let it define him. There was a whole world out there he had been missing, and he was determined to explore it, with Olivia and Sophia by his side. The path ahead was uncertain, and Alexander knew there would be challenges. His father wouldn't easily accept this shift in priorities, and there was still so much to navigate in his new relationship with Olivia and Sophia. But for the first time in years, Alexander felt truly alive, truly excited about the future. As he headed to bed, he paused outside Sophia's room, smiling at the sound of her soft breathing. Then, almost without thinking, he found himself outside Olivia's door. He raised his hand to knock, wanting to share his thoughts, his new perspectives, but he hesitated, realizing the late hour. There would be time, he realized. Time to talk, to grow, to figure out this new life together. For now, it was enough to know that on the other side of that door was someone who was quickly becoming more important to him than he ever could have imagined. With a soft smile, Alexander retreated to his own room, his mind full of plans and possibilities. Tomorrow was a new day, and he couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The chandeliers of the grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow over the sea of designer gowns and tuxedos below. Olivia Martinez Blackwood stood at the edge of the crowd, a glass of champagne clutched in her hand like a lifeline. She smoothed down the front of her elegant black dress, a garment that cost more than her old monthly rent, and took a deep breath, trying to quell the anxiety bubbling in her chest. This was her first major social event as Mrs. Blackwood, a charity gala for one of the city's most prestigious art museums. Alexander had assured her that it would be a good opportunity to meet people and start building her own network in their new social circle. But as Olivia scanned the room full of New York's elite, she couldn't help but feel like an imposter. "Darling, there you are." Alexander's voice came from behind her, warm and reassuring. He placed a gentle hand on the small of her back, a gesture that was becoming comfortingly familiar. "I'd like you to meet someone." Olivia allowed herself to be guided through the crowd, plastering on a smile that she hoped looked more confident than she felt. They approached a striking woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a crimson gown that screamed old money. "Olivia, this is Margaret Astor," Alexander said. "She's the chairwoman of the museum's board of trustees. Margaret, my wife, Olivia." Margaret's eyes swept over Olivia, assessing. "So lovely to finally meet you, my dear. We've all been so curious about the woman who managed to catch our Alexander." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Astor. The museum is doing wonderful work. I was particularly moved by the new exhibit on immigrant artists." Margaret's eyebrows raised slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "Oh, you've had a chance to visit already. How marvelous. Most of our new members don't make it down there for months." "Olivia has quite an eye for art," Alexander interjected smoothly. "She's been introducing me to artists I'm embarrassed to say I'd never heard of before." As the conversation flowed, touching on various exhibits and upcoming events, Olivia felt some of her tension ease. This wasn't so different from chatting with the parents at Sophia's school, she realized, just with fancier clothes and more expensive wine. But as the evening wore on, Olivia found herself increasingly aware of the undercurrents running through many of her interactions. There were the curious glances, the not-so-subtle probing questions about her background, the occasional condescending remark thinly veiled as a compliment. "You speak so well, dear," one woman said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Where did you say you went to school again?" Olivia straightened her spine, meeting the woman's gaze directly. "I attended City College," she said proudly, "on a scholarship. They have an excellent education program." Before the woman could respond, Alexander appeared at Olivia's side. "Excuse us, Mrs. Van Buren, but I'm afraid I need to steal my wife away for a moment." As they moved away, Olivia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you," she murmured. "I'm not sure how much more of that I can take." Alexander's expression was a mix of concern and admiration. "You're doing wonderfully," he said softly. "I'm sorry about Mrs. Van Buren. Some people here can be less than welcoming to newcomers." Olivia nodded, a wry smile tugging at her lips. I'm starting to get that. It's like high school all over again, just with better clothes and sharper knives. Alexander chuckled, but his eyes were serious. We can leave if you want. You don't have to prove anything to these people. For a moment, Olivia was tempted. The idea of kicking off her painful heels and curling up on the couch with Sophia sounded heavenly. But then she thought of her daughter, of the opportunities this new world could offer her. If Olivia was going to make this work, she needed to carve out a place for herself here. No, she said, squaring her shoulders. I'm okay. Besides, I haven't had a chance to check out the silent auction yet. Didn't you say there was a piece you were interested in? Alexander's face lit up with a genuine smile, the kind that still made Olivia's heart skip a beat. There is, actually. Shall we? As they made their way to the auction area, Olivia found herself hyper-aware of Alexander's presence beside her. Over the past weeks, she had started to see glimpses of a different man than the one she'd first met. Someone thoughtful, kind, and surprisingly funny. It was becoming increasingly difficult to remember that their marriage was an arrangement, not a love match. The auction tables were crowded, but Alexander expertly navigated them to a painting hanging on the far wall. It was a beautiful piece, a cityscape at twilight, the buildings a mix of shadow and golden light. It's stunning, Olivia breathed, leaning in to examine the brushwork. It's by a local artist, Alexander explained. She does a lot of work with underprivileged youth, teaching art classes in community centers. I thought it might be nice for Sophia's room, to remind her of where she came from, but also to show her the beauty in the city. Olivia felt a lump form in her throat, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. Alexander, that's incredibly sweet. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the bustling gala faded away. Olivia found herself lost in Alexander's gaze, seeing a warmth and vulnerability there that she'd never noticed before. The spell was broken by a booming voice behind them. Alexander, my boy, there you are. They turned to see Richard Blackwood approaching, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. His smile was wide, but his eyes were sharp as they flicked between Alexander and Olivia. Father, Alexander said, his tone cooling noticeably. I didn't realize you were attending tonight. Last-minute decision, Richard said breezily. Couldn't miss the chance to see my son and his lovely new wife in action. He turned to Olivia, his gaze assessing. You're looking quite elegant this evening, my dear. I trust you're enjoying your foray into high society. Olivia felt Alexander tense beside her, but she met Richard's gaze steadily. It's certainly been an educational experience, Mr. Blackwood. Everyone has been very welcoming. Richard's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. Glad to hear it. You know, I was just speaking with Charles Winthrop. You remember him, don't you, Alexander? His daughter Rebecca is back in town, newly single, as I understand it. Alexander's jaw clenched. How nice for her, he said flatly. If you'll excuse us, Father, Olivia and I were just about to place a bid. As they moved away, Olivia could feel Richard's gaze boring into her back. I'm sorry about that, Alexander murmured. My father can be difficult. Olivia squeezed his arm reassuringly. It's okay. I'm starting to understand where you get your stubborn streak from. Alexander chuckled, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. Oh, you have no idea. But let's not let him ruin the evening. What do you say we place that bid and then find somewhere a bit quieter? They ended up on a small balcony overlooking the city, the sounds of the gala muffled behind closed doors. Olivia leaned against the railing, letting the cool night air soothe her frazzled nerves. You were amazing in there, Alexander said softly, coming to stand beside her. I know it's not easy stepping into this world. Olivia turned to look at him, struck by the sincerity in his voice. It's certainly different from what I'm used to, she admitted, but I'm learning, and having you by my side makes it easier. Alexander's expression softened, and for a moment Olivia thought he might kiss her, but then he cleared his throat, looking away. I'm glad, he said. I know this isn't what either of us expected, but I'm really grateful you're here, Olivia. As they stood there, looking out over the glittering city, Olivia felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with anxiety. This arrangement with Alexander had started as a means to an end, a way to secure a better future for Sophia. But somewhere along the way it had become something more. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. Falling for Alexander hadn't been part of the plan. It complicated everything. added a layer of vulnerability to an already precarious situation. And yet, as she stole another glance at his profile, Olivia couldn't bring herself to regret the warm feelings blooming in her heart. "We should probably head back inside," Alexander said eventually, though he sounded reluctant. "People will be wondering where we've disappeared to." Olivia nodded, straightening up and smoothing down her dress. As they turned to go, Alexander caught her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Whatever happens in there," he said softly, "just remember, you belong here, Olivia. Not because of me or my name, but because of who you are. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Touched by his words, Olivia felt a surge of confidence. She may not have been born into this world of wealth and privilege, but she was determined to carve out a place for herself and Sophia. And with Alexander by her side, she was starting to believe that anything was possible. As they re-entered the ballroom, heads turning to watch their entrance, Olivia held her head high. She may have started the evening feeling like an imposter, but she would end it on her own terms. This was her life now, for better or worse, and she was ready to embrace it, challenges, complications and all. The sleek conference room on the top floor of Blackwood Enterprises hummed with tension. Alexander Blackwood sat at the head of the long table, his father Richard to his right as they faced the board of directors. The quarterly meeting had been progressing smoothly until Alexander dropped what felt like a bombshell, which is why I propose we allocate a significant portion of our philanthropic budget to educational initiatives in underserved communities, Alexander concluded, his voice firm despite the nervous energy coursing through him. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander could feel his father's gaze boring into him, but he kept his eyes on the board members, gauging their reactions. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. "While my son's enthusiasm is admirable, I think we need to consider the practicality of such a large shift in our charitable giving. Our current initiatives have been carefully crafted to maximize positive publicity and tax benefits." Alexander felt a familiar surge of frustration. "With all due respect, Father, I believe we have a responsibility to do more than just maximize tax benefits. We have the resources to make a real difference in people's lives." One of the older board members, a man who had been with the company since before Alexander was born, spoke up. "Alexander, while your intentions are noble, we must consider the shareholders. How do you propose to explain this shift in priorities?" Alexander leaned forward, his passion evident in his voice. "By showing them that investing in education and community development isn't just the right thing to do morally, it's smart business. We're creating a stronger, more skilled workforce for the future. We're building goodwill in communities where we might want to expand. And we're setting ourselves apart as a company that truly cares about more than just the bottom line." As the discussion continued, with board members debating the pros and cons of Alexander's proposal, he couldn't help but think about how much he had changed in the past few months. Before Olivia and Sophia came into his life, he might have agreed with his father's approach, cold, calculating, focused solely on profit and image. But now, having seen firsthand the struggles and potential of communities like the one Olivia came from, Alexander couldn't ignore the opportunity they had to make a real impact. After what felt like hours of debate, a compromise was reached. The board agreed to a pilot program, allocating a portion of the philanthropic budget to Alexander's proposed initiatives, with the understanding that the results would be closely monitored. As the meeting adjourned and board members filed out, Richard placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder, his grip just a little too tight. "A word in my office, son?" Once inside the opulent corner office, Richard's carefully maintained composure slipped. "What the hell was that, Alexander? We had a clear strategy for this quarter, and you just threw it out the window on a whim." Alexander stood his ground, meeting his father's glare. "It wasn't a whim, Father. I've been researching this for weeks. The potential impact of these programs—" "Impact?" Richard scoffed. "The only impact that matters is on our bottom line. This company isn't a charity, Alexander. It's a business, and it's high time you started treating it like one." "Maybe that's the problem," Alexander shot back. "We've been so focused on profits that we've lost sight of our responsibility to the communities we operate in. Times are changing, Father. Companies are being held to higher standards. We need to adapt." Richard's eyes narrowed. "This is about her, isn't it? That woman and her daughter. They've filled your head with these idealistic notions." Alexander felt a surge of protective anger. Leave Olivia and Sophia out of this. They've opened my eyes to a world beyond our bubble of wealth and privilege, yes. But this decision is mine. I truly believe it's the right thing for the company. The right thing? Richard's voice dripped with sarcasm. And I suppose you think you know what's right for this company better than I do. Better than the man who built it from the ground up? For a moment, Alexander was tempted to back down, to fall into the familiar pattern of acquiescing to his father's will. But then he thought of Olivia's strength in facing a world so different from her own, of Sophia's innocent belief that anything was possible. He couldn't let them down. Maybe I do, he said quietly. Maybe it's time for some fresh perspectives around here. Richard's face flushed with anger. Watch yourself, Alexander. Don't forget who you are and where you come from. This little experiment of yours with playing house doesn't change the fact that you have a legacy to uphold. Alexander felt something snap inside him. A legacy? Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like a prison. One you've been trying to lock me into my entire life. He turned to leave, but Richard's voice stopped him at the door. This isn't over, Alexander. You can't change who you are or what this family stands for. The sooner you accept that, the better off we'll all be. Alexander paused, his hand on the doorknob. Without turning around, he said softly, Maybe I can't change where I came from, Father, but I can damn well change where I'm going. With that, he left, the door closing behind him with a decisive click. As Alexander rode the elevator down to the lobby, his mind raced. He knew this confrontation with his father had been brewing for weeks, but he hadn't expected it to come to a head so dramatically. Part of him was terrified of the consequences, of potentially jeopardizing his position in the company and the security it provided for Olivia and Sophia, but a larger part felt liberated. For the first time in his life, he had stood up to his father not out of petty rebellion, but because he truly believed in something. As he stepped out onto the busy New York street, Alexander found himself walking aimlessly, needing time to process the tumultuous meeting. Without really thinking about it, he found himself heading towards Sophia's school. It was nearing pickup time, and the idea of seeing her smiling face was suddenly the only thing that made sense. He arrived just as the final bell rang, joining the throng of parents and nannies waiting outside the ornate gates of the elite private school. As children began pouring out, Alexander scanned the crowd for Sophia's familiar dark curls. "Alexander?" A surprised voice came from beside him. He turned to see Olivia looking stunning in a simple sundress, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "Olivia, I didn't expect to see you here," Alexander stammered, suddenly acutely aware of how disheveled he must look after his confrontation with his father. Concern flickered across Olivia's face. "Is everything okay? You look a little frazzled." Before Alexander could respond, a joyful shout cut through the air. "Mommy! Alexander!" Sophia came bounding towards them, her backpack bouncing with each step. As she reached them, Sophia threw her arms around both Olivia and Alexander, pulling them into an impromptu group hug. The simple, unconditional affection of the child washed over Alexander like a balm, soothing the raw edges of his emotions. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, ruffling Sophia's hair. "How was school today?" As Sophia launched into an animated recounting of her day, complete with dramatic reenactments of playground adventures, Alexander felt the tension from earlier begin to melt away. This, he realized, was what truly mattered. Not stock prices or board meetings, but the genuine connections and moments of joy he had found with Olivia and Sophia. Olivia must have sensed his mood, because she gently suggested, "Why don't we all go for ice cream? I think we could use a little treat today." As they walked to the nearby ice cream parlor, Sophia skipping between them and chattering happily, Alexander felt a surge of emotion. This was his family now, unexpected and unconventional as it may be, and he would do whatever it took to protect and nurture it, even if it meant going against everything he had been raised to believe. Later that evening, after Sophia had been tucked into bed, Alexander found Olivia on the balcony looking out over the city. The setting sun cast a warm glow over her features, and Alexander was struck anew by her beauty. Not just physical, but the inner strength and kindness that radiated from her. "Want to talk about what happened today?" Olivia asked softly, turning to face him. Alexander sighed, joining her at the railing. "I had a disagreement with my father. about the direction of the company. As he explained the situation, Olivia listened attentively, her expression a mix of concern and pride. When he finished, she placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You did the right thing, Alexander. Standing up for what you believe in isn't easy, especially when it goes against everything you've been taught." Her unwavering support touched Alexander deeply. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. "You and Sophia, you've changed everything for me, shown me a different way of looking at the world." Olivia's eyes shimmered with emotion. "You've changed things for us too, you know. And not just in the obvious ways, you've become important to us, to me." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feelings. Alexander found himself leaning in, drawn by an invisible force. Olivia tilted her face up, her lips parting slightly. Just as their lips were about to meet, a small voice called out from inside the penthouse, "Mommy, Alexander, I had a bad dream." The moment broken, they pulled apart, sharing a rueful smile. "I'll go," Alexander said softly. "You get some rest." As he turned to comfort Sophia, Alexander felt a mix of frustration and tenderness. The timing might not have been right for that kiss, but he knew now with absolute certainty that his feelings for Olivia were real and growing stronger every day. Whatever challenges lay ahead, with his father, with the company, with navigating this unconventional family they were building, Alexander was ready to face them. Because for the first time in his life, he knew exactly what he was fighting for. The early morning sun filtered through the curtains of the penthouse, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where Olivia stood, absently stirring her coffee. Her mind was far away, replaying the conversation she'd had with Mrs. Gonzalez the night before. "Olivia, dear," her former neighbor had said, her voice crackling over the phone. "I hate to bother you, but, well, there's been some talk around the old neighborhood. Someone's been asking questions about you and Sophia." The news had sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She'd worked hard to leave her past behind, to create a stable life for Sophia. The idea that someone might be digging into that past filled her with dread. "Olivia?" Alexander's voice broke through her reverie. He entered the kitchen, already dressed for work, concern etched on his face. "Is everything okay? You seem distracted." Olivia forced a smile, not wanting to burden him with her worries. "I'm fine, just a little tired." "How are you feeling about today?" Alexander's expression tightened slightly. It was his first day back at the office since his confrontation with his father. "As ready as I'll ever be, I suppose. Father's going to be on the warpath, but I stand by what I said." Olivia reached out, squeezing his hand. "I'm proud of you, you know. Standing up for what you believe in isn't easy." Alexander's features softened as he looked at her, and for a moment Olivia thought he might kiss her. But then Sophia's voice rang out from down the hall, announcing she was ready for school, and the moment passed. As they went through their morning routine, getting Sophia ready, Alexander leaving for work with a lingering look at Olivia, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. She needed to find out who was asking questions and why. Later that morning, after dropping Sophia off at school, Olivia found herself back in her old neighborhood. The familiar sights and sounds brought a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. This had been her home for so long, the place where she'd struggled and persevered as a single mother. Now it felt like a different world. She made her way to the community center where she used to volunteer, hoping to catch up with some of her old friends and maybe get some information. As she approached the building, a familiar figure emerged from the entrance. "Marco?" Olivia called out, recognizing her ex-boyfriend, Sophia's father. Marco turned, his eyes widening in surprise. "Olivia, is that really you?" As they stood face to face for the first time in years, Olivia was struck by how little he had changed. The same easy smile, the same warm brown eyes that Sophia had inherited, but there was something else there now, a hardness around the edges that she didn't remember. "What are you doing here, Marco?" Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Marco shrugged, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Can't a guy visit his old stomping grounds? I heard you'd moved on up in the world. Married some rich guy, living the high life now, huh?" Olivia felt a flicker of anger. "My life is none of your business, Marco. You made that clear when you walked out on us." "Come on, Liv, don't be like that," Marco said, his tone wheedling. "I've changed. I've got a good job now, I'm stable. I've been thinking a lot about Sophia, about being a part of her life." Olivia's heart raced. Was this why someone had been asking questions? Had Marco come back to try and claim a place in Sophia's life after all these years? Sophia is happy, Marco, Olivia said firmly. She has a good life, a stable home. Where were you when she was crying for her daddy? When I was working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads? Marco's expression darkened. That's not fair, Olivia. I was young, I made mistakes. But I'm her father, I have rights. Rights? Olivia scoffed. You gave up those rights when you walked out on us. Sophia has a father figure now, someone who cares for her, who's there for her every day. As soon as the words left her mouth, Olivia realized their truth. Alexander had become more than just a stepfather to Sophia. He was a true parent in all the ways that mattered. Marco's face contorted with anger. So that's how it is? You think you can just replace me with some rich guy? We'll see about that. As he stormed off, Olivia felt a wave of panic wash over her. What if Marco tried to fight for custody? The idea of Sophia being torn between 2 worlds, of having to relive the pain of her father's abandonment, was unbearable. With shaking hands, Olivia pulled out her phone and dialed Alexander's number. She needed him, needed his strength and support, now more than ever. Across town, Alexander was in the middle of a tense meeting with the company's legal team when his phone buzzed. Seeing Olivia's name on the screen, he excused himself, stepping out into the hallway. "Olivia, is everything okay?" he asked, immediately picking up on the distress in her voice. As Olivia explained the situation, Alexander felt a surge of protective anger. "I'm on my way," he said without hesitation. "We'll face this together, Olivia. I promise." Hanging up, Alexander turned to find his father standing behind him, a disapproving frown on his face. "Leaving in the middle of an important meeting, Alexander. This isn't like you." Alexander straightened his shoulders, meeting his father's gaze. "Olivia needs me. This is more important." Richard's eyes narrowed. "More important than the future of this company? Than your responsibilities here?" "Yes," Alexander said simply. "My family needs me, and that's exactly where I'm going to be." As he brushed past his father, ignoring the older man's calls, Alexander felt a sense of clarity he'd never experienced before. His priorities had shifted, and he finally understood what truly mattered in life. When Alexander arrived at their old neighborhood, he found Olivia sitting on a bench in the small park, where she used to take Sophia to play. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Without a word, he sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. Olivia melted into his embrace, her body shaking with silent sobs. "It's okay," Alexander murmured, stroking her hair. "I'm here. We'll figure this out together." As Olivia's tears subsided, she pulled back slightly, looking up at Alexander with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to pull you away from work. I didn't know who else to call." Alexander cupped her face gently, his thumb wiping away a stray tear. "Olivia, listen to me. You and Sophia are my family now. There's nowhere else I'd rather be than right here with you." The intensity in his eyes took Olivia's breath away. In that moment, all the feelings she'd been trying to suppress came rushing to the surface. Without thinking, she leaned in, pressing her lips to his in a desperate, passionate kiss. Alexander responded immediately, pulling her closer, pouring all his love and support into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. Alexander's expression grew determined. "First, we talk to our lawyers. If Marco wants to try for custody, we'll be prepared. But more importantly, we need to talk to Sophia. She deserves to know what's happening, and to have a say in her own future." Olivia nodded, grateful for Alexander's level-headed approach. "You're right. We should pick her up from school early, talk to her at home where she feels safe." As they stood to leave, hand in hand, Olivia felt a mix of fear and hope. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. She had Alexander by her side, a partner in every sense of the word. The confrontation with Marco had brought her past crashing into her present, threatening the new life she'd built. But it had also crystallized something for Olivia. Her feelings for Alexander were real, deep, and powerful. What had started as an arrangement had blossomed into true love, a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. As they made their way back to the car, Olivia squeezed Alexander's hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being here, for caring about Sophia, for everything." Alexander brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Always," he promised. "We're in this together, Olivia. You, me, and Sophia, we're a family, and nothing will change that." With renewed determination, they set off to face the challenges ahead, their bond stronger than ever. The future was uncertain, but as long as they had each other, Olivia knew they could handle whatever came their way. The penthouse was unusually quiet as Olivia and Alexander sat on the plush sofa, waiting for Sophia to return from her room. They had picked her up early from school, explaining that they had something important to discuss. Now, as they heard her small footsteps approaching, they exchanged a nervous glance. Sophia entered the living room, her big brown eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of worry. "Am I in trouble?" she asked, her voice small. Olivia's heart clenched. "No, sweetheart, not at all. Come here, sit with us." "Yeah, sit. We need to talk about something important." As Sophia settled between them, Alexander gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Remember how we talked about different kinds of families?" he began, his voice soft and reassuring. Sophia nodded. "Like how some kids have two mummies or two daddies or just one parent." "That's right," Olivia said, taking a deep breath. "And you know how before we met Alexander, it was just you and me for a long time?" Sophia nodded again, her brow furrowing slightly. "Because my real daddy wasn't around." Olivia and Alexander exchanged a look over Sophia's head. This was the moment of truth. "Well, sweetie," Olivia continued, her voice trembling slightly, "your biological father, the man who helped make you, he's back in town. And he wants to meet you." Sophia's eyes widened. "My real daddy, he wants to see me." Alexander felt a pang in his chest at the words, "real daddy," but he pushed it aside. This wasn't about him. It was about what was best for Sophia. "Yes, honey," Olivia said, stroking Sophia's hair, "but I want you to understand something very important. Just because he's your biological father doesn't mean you have to see him if you don't want to. And it doesn't change anything about our family. You, me, and Alexander." Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she looked up at Alexander, her eyes filled with a mix of confusion and worry. "Does this mean you won't be my daddy anymore?" Alexander felt his throat tighten with emotion. He knelt down in front of Sophia, taking her small hands in his. "Sophia, listen to me. I love you, and nothing will ever change that. Whether you decide to meet your biological father or not, I will always be here for you. Always." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes as she threw her arms around Alexander's neck. "I love you too, Daddy," she whispered. Olivia watched the scene unfold, her own eyes brimming with tears. In that moment, she knew without a doubt that they had made the right decision in being honest with Sophia. As they spent the rest of the evening talking through Sophia's questions and concerns, Olivia marveled at her daughter's resilience and maturity. Sophia decided that she did want to meet Marco, but she was clear that she wanted Alexander there too. "He's my daddy now," she insisted. "I want him to meet my other daddy." Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Olivia and Alexander sat on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. The events of the day had left them both emotionally drained, but somehow stronger as a unit. "You were amazing with her," Olivia said softly, leaning her head on Alexander's shoulder. "The way you handled everything. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in this." Alexander wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "We're in this together, remember? Whatever happens, we face it as a family." As they sat in comfortable silence, both lost in thought, Alexander's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at it and sighed. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, sensing his tension. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. "It's my father. He wants to meet tomorrow to discuss my recent behavior and future with the company." He let out a humorless chuckle. "I'm pretty sure that translates to, 'fall back in line or else.'" Olivia sat up, turning to face him. "What are you going to do?" Alexander was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. Then he looked at Olivia, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "I'm going to tell him the truth, that my priorities have changed, that you and Sophia are the most important things in my life now, and if he can't accept that, Then maybe it's time for me to step away from the company. Olivia's eyes widened. Alexander, are you sure? The company? It's your legacy, your future. He shook his head, taking her hands in his. No, Olivia. You and Sophia are my future. The company is just a job. A job I care about, yes, but not at the expense of our family. Olivia felt her heart swell with love and admiration for this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly and changed everything. She leaned in, kissing him softly. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We're with you. The next morning, as Alexander prepared to leave for his meeting with Richard, there was a palpable tension in the air. Sophia, picking up on the adult's stress, was unusually quiet as she ate her breakfast. Just as Alexander was about to head out, Sophia ran up to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Good luck with your daddy, she said, looking up at him with those big brown eyes. Remember, families stick together no matter what. Alexander felt his throat tighten with emotion. He knelt down, hugging Sophia tightly. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Thank you for reminding me. As he stood, he saw Olivia watching them, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She stepped forward, straightening his tie. Go show them what you're made of, she said softly. We'll be here when you get back. With a final kiss for Olivia and a ruffle of Sophia's hair, Alexander left, feeling more certain than ever about his path forward. The Blackwood Enterprises boardroom was tense as Alexander faced his father and the other board members. Richard Blackwood's face was a mask of stern disapproval as he addressed his son. Alexander, your recent behavior has been cause for concern, Richard began, his voice cold. Your new initiatives, your sudden absences, your apparent lack of commitment to this company's future. It's time to decide where your loyalties lie. Alexander took a deep breath, thinking of Olivia and Sophia, of the family they were building together. When he spoke, his voice was calm and resolute. My loyalties lie with doing what's right, he said. For this company, yes, but also for the communities we serve, for the people who work for us, and for my family. Richard's eyes narrowed. Your family? You mean that woman and her child? They're not your real family, Alexander. This company, this legacy, that's your true family. Alexander felt a surge of anger, but he kept his composure. No, Father. Olivia and Sophia are my family now, and they've taught me more about love, compassion, and what really matters in life than I ever learned in this boardroom. He stood, looking each board member in the eye. I believe this company has the potential to do real good in the world, to be more than just a profit machine. If you can't see that, if you can't accept that I'm not going to be the cutthroat businessman you want me to be, then perhaps it's best if I step down from my position. A murmur ran through the room. Richard's face flushed with anger. You would throw away everything we've built? For what? Some misguided sense of social responsibility? Alexander shook his head. No, Father. For the chance to build something even greater, a life of purpose, of love, of real impact. As he turned to leave, one of the younger board members spoke up. Wait, Alexander, I think you might be onto something here. Maybe it's time we considered a new direction for the company. Others began to nod, a spark of interest in their eyes. Richard looked around the room, realizing he was losing control of the narrative. This isn't over, he growled at Alexander. We'll continue this discussion later. As Alexander left the boardroom, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had stood his ground, had been true to himself and the values he now held dear. Whatever came next, he knew he had made the right choice. Arriving home, he found Olivia and Sophia waiting anxiously. As soon as he walked through the door, they enveloped him in a group hug. How did it go? Olivia asked, searching his face. Alexander smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. It went exactly as it needed to. There's still a lot to figure out, but I know now more than ever that this, us, is what matters most. As they stood there, holding each other close, Alexander knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from his father, from Marco, or from the world at large, they would face them together, because that's what families do. And in Olivia and Sophia, he had found the family he had always longed for. The cafe buzzed with the quiet chatter of patrons and the gentle clinking of cups against saucers. Olivia sat rigidly in her chair, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of cooling coffee. Beside her, Alexander exuded calm strength, his hand resting reassuringly on her knee under the table. Across from them sat Sophia, her legs swinging nervously as she sipped her hot chocolate. They were waiting for Marco. The decision to meet in a public place had been a joint one, a neutral ground that felt safe for everyone involved. As the minutes ticked by, Olivia found herself second-guessing their choice to allow this meeting at all. But one look at Sophia's face, a mixture of excitement and apprehension, reminded her why they were here. The bell above the cafe door chimed, and Olivia's head snapped up. Marco walked in, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on their table. For a moment he froze, taking in the sight of his daughter. Sophia's grip on her mug tightened as she looked up at the man approaching their table. "Is that him, Mommy?" she whispered. Olivia nodded, finding her voice. "Yes, sweetheart, that's Marco." As Marco reached their table, an awkward silence fell over the group. Alexander stood, extending his hand. "Marco, I'm Alexander Blackwood. We spoke on the phone." Marco shook his hand, his eyes never leaving Sophia. "Thank you for arranging this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Finally, he turned to Olivia. "Liv," he said softly, "you look good." Olivia managed a tight smile. "Hello, Marco, please sit down." As Marco took his seat, Sophia looked between the adults, her brow furrowed in confusion. Alexander gently prompted her. "Sophia, do you want to introduce yourself?" Sophia straightened in her chair, summoning her courage. "Hi," she said, her voice small but clear. "I'm Sophia. I'm 7 years old, and I like drawing and playing soccer." Marco's face broke into a wide smile. "Hi, Sophia. It's really great to meet you. I like soccer too. Maybe we could play together sometime?" Olivia felt a pang in her chest at the hopeful look on Marco's face. She reminded herself that this meeting was for Sophia's benefit, to give her daughter the chance to know her biological father if she chose to. As the conversation progressed, with Marco asking Sophia about school and her hobbies, Olivia found herself studying the man she had once loved. He seemed different, more mature perhaps, with a steadiness that hadn't been there before, but there was also a nervousness to him, a desperation to connect that made her wary. Alexander, sensing Olivia's tension, stepped in smoothly. "Sophia, why don't you show Marco some of your drawings? You brought your sketchbook, right?" Sophia nodded eagerly, pulling out her book and flipping it open. As she showed Marco her colorful creations, explaining each one in detail, Olivia felt a mix of pride and protection wash over her. "This is our family," Sophia said, pointing to a drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall with curly hair, one with long straight hair and a smaller figure between them. "That's Mommy, that's me, and that's Daddy Alexander." Marco's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "It's a beautiful drawing, Sophia. You're very talented." As the meeting drew to a close, Marco looked at Olivia and Alexander. I'd like to be a part of Sophia's life if you'll let me. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I want to try." Olivia took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Marco, we appreciate you coming today. Sophia deserves to know where she comes from, but we need to take this slowly, for her sake. We can discuss arranging more visits, but there need to be clear boundaries." Marco nodded, a mix of hope and resignation on his face. "I understand. Thank you for giving me this chance." As they said their goodbyes, with Marco giving Sophia an awkward but heartfelt hug, Olivia felt a whirlwind of emotions. She was proud of Sophia's maturity, grateful for Alexander's unwavering support, and apprehensive about what Marco's presence in their lives might mean. Later that evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Olivia and Alexander sat on the balcony of their penthouse, processing the day's events. "You were amazing today," Alexander said softly, pulling Olivia close. "The way you handled everything, putting Sophia's needs first, you're an incredible mother." Olivia leaned into his embrace, feeling the tension of the day begin to melt away. "I couldn't have done it without you," she murmured. "The way you were with Sophia, how you supported both of us. Alexander, I don't know how to thank you." Alexander tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes. "You don't need to thank me, Olivia. We're a family. This is what families do. We support each other no matter what." As they sat in comfortable silence, looking out over the glittering city skyline, Olivia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. What had started as an arrangement, a business deal of sorts, had blossomed into something real and precious. "What are you thinking?" Alexander asked, noticing her pensive expression. Olivia turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I'm thinking about how lucky I am, how lucky Sophia is. When I agreed to this marriage, I never dreamed it could turn into this. Alexander's face softened with emotion. Olivia, I need you to know something. This, you and Sophia, you're not just some obligation to me. You're my heart, my home. I love you both more than I ever thought possible. The words hung in the air between them, a declaration that had been building for months. Olivia felt her heart swell with joy and love. We love you too, Alexander, so much. As their lips met in a tender kiss, Olivia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from Marco, from Alexander's father, or from the world at large, they would face them together, because that's what real families did. Inside the penthouse, unbeknownst to the adults, Sophia sat on the stairs, a small smile on her face as she watched her parents through the glass doors. She may not have understood all the grown-up complications, but she knew one thing for certain. She had a family that loved her, and that was all that mattered. As she quietly made her way back to bed, Sophia felt a sense of peace settle over her. Meeting Marco had been interesting, and she was curious to know more about him. But Alexander was her daddy, the one who read her bedtime stories, who cheered at her soccer games, who made her mum smile in a way she'd never seen before. Snuggling under her covers, Sophia closed her eyes, her heart full of love for her unconventional but perfect family. Whatever happened next, she knew they would face it together, because that's what the Blackwoods did. Weeks had passed since Sophia's first meeting with Marco, and life in the Blackwood household had settled into a new rhythm. The initial tension had eased, replaced by a cautious optimism as they navigated this new chapter in their lives. On a sunny Saturday morning, Olivia stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast as Alexander helped Sophia with her latest art project at the dining table. The domestic scene was interrupted by the chime of Olivia's phone. "It's Marco," she said, a slight frown creasing her brow as she read the message. "He wants to know if he can take Sophia to the zoo this afternoon." Alexander looked up, his expression careful. "What do you think?" Olivia sighed, setting down her phone. "I don't know. We've had a few short visits, but this would be the first time he's taken her out alone." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Can I go, Mommy? Please? Marco said he'd show me how to draw animals last time." Olivia and Alexander exchanged a look, having one of their silent conversations that had become so natural over the past months. "Okay," Olivia said finally. "But I want you to keep your phone on you at all times, and call us if you need anything at all, okay?" Sophia nodded eagerly, her excitement palpable. As she raced off to get ready, Alexander stood and wrapped his arms around Olivia from behind. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. Olivia leaned back into his embrace. "No," she admitted, "but we have to give him a chance, right?" "For Sophia's sake." Alexander pressed a kiss to her temple. "You're an amazing mother, you know that, always putting Sophia first." As they watched Sophia bounce out the door with Marco later that afternoon, Olivia felt a mix of emotions swirling in her chest. Pride at her daughter's resilience and openness, worry about what Marco's increasing presence in their lives might mean, and an overwhelming gratitude for Alexander's unwavering support through it all. "So," Alexander said, closing the door behind Sophia, "what should we do with our unexpected free afternoon?" Olivia smiled, some of her tension easing. "Well, I can think of a few things." Hours later, as they lay tangled in the sheets of their bed, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text. She reached for it, her heart rate quickening when she saw it was from Sophia. "Everything okay?" Alexander asked, propping himself up on an elbow. Olivia read the message, a small smile tugging at her lips. "She's fine. Apparently Marco bought her a stuffed penguin, and they're having ice cream before heading home." Alexander's brow furrowed slightly. "A stuffed penguin? Isn't that the same thing you got her on our first trip to the zoo?" Olivia finished. "Yes, it is." A moment of silence stretched between them, the implications hanging in the air. Marco was trying, perhaps too hard, to bond with Sophia, to make up for lost time. But in doing so, he was inadvertently stepping on toes, replicating moments that Alexander had shared with Sophia. "I'm sure he didn't know," Olivia said softly, seeing the conflict in Alexander's eyes. Alexander nodded, but Olivia could see the hint of hurt he was trying to hide. She cupped his face gently, making him meet her gaze. "Hey," she said, "you know you're Sophia's dad, right? In all the ways that truly matter. A stuffed penguin doesn't change that." Alexander managed a small smile. "I know. It's just, I guess I'm still getting used to sharing her." Olivia kissed him softly. "We both are. But we'll figure it out. Together." When Sophia returned home, bubbling with excitement about her day at the zoo, Olivia and Alexander listened attentively, sharing smiles over her enthusiasm. But as Sophia pulled out her new stuffed penguin, Olivia saw Alexander's smile falter for just a moment. "Look, Daddy," Sophia exclaimed, holding up the toy. "Isn't he cute? I named him Waddles, just like the one you got me." Alexander's expression softened, touched by Sophia's innocent gesture to include him. "He's wonderful, sweetheart. Maybe Waddles would like a friend to keep him company." As Sophia raced off to introduce her new penguin to its stuffed animal companions, Olivia squeezed Alexander's hand. "You're a good man, Alexander Blackwood," she murmured. The next few weeks brought more changes, as Marco became a more regular presence in their lives. He would pick Sophia up from school occasionally, take her to soccer practice, or spend an afternoon helping with her art projects. While Sophia seemed to be thriving with the additional attention, Olivia couldn't help but notice the subtle shifts in their family dynamic. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Alexander broached the subject that had been weighing on both their minds. "Olivia," he began hesitantly, "I've been thinking, maybe we should consider formalizing my role in Sophia's life. Legally, I mean." Olivia paused in her chopping, looking up at him. "You mean adoption?" Alexander nodded. "I know it's a big step, and I don't want to pressure you or Sophia, but with Marco back in the picture, I want to make sure my place in Sophia's life is secure." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat, overwhelmed by the depth of Alexander's commitment to their family. "Oh, Alexander," she whispered, "I think that's a wonderful idea. But are you sure? Once it's done, there's no going back." Alexander set down the spoon he was holding and took Olivia's hands in his. "Olivia, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You and Sophia, you're my family, my home. I want to make it official in every way possible." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes as she pulled Alexander into a tight embrace. "I love you," she murmured against his chest. "We both do so much." As they held each other in the kitchen, both lost in the emotion of the moment, they didn't notice Sophia standing in the doorway, a bright smile on her face. She had heard enough to understand the gist of their conversation, and her heart swelled with joy at the thought of Alexander becoming her official daddy. Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Olivia and Alexander sat on the balcony discussing the practicalities of the adoption process. "We'll need to talk to Marco," Olivia said softly. "He'll have to agree to terminate his parental rights." Alexander nodded, his expression serious. "Do you think he will?" Olivia sighed, looking out over the city lights. "I don't know. He seems genuinely committed to being part of Sophia's life now. But he also knows he has a lot to make up for. We'll just have to be honest with him, explain our reasons." As they continued to talk, mapping out their next steps, neither of them could have anticipated the storm that was brewing on the horizon. Marco's reaction to their adoption plans would test the strength of their family in ways they never expected, forcing them all to confront difficult truths and make heart-wrenching decisions. But for now, in the quiet of the night, with the woman he loved by his side, and the daughter of his heart sleeping peacefully inside, Alexander felt a sense of peace and purpose he'd never known before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them as they had everything else, together as a family. The restaurant buzzed with the low murmur of conversation and the clink of silverware against plates. Olivia sat across from Marco, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. They had agreed to meet without Sophia or Alexander present, a decision that now felt both wise and terribly uncomfortable. "So," Marco said, leaning back in his chair with a forced casualness that didn't quite mask his tension, "what's this important thing you wanted to talk about, Liv?" Olivia took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was for Sophia's benefit. "Marco, you know how much it means to Sophia that you're back in her life, and I appreciate the effort you've been making." Marco's eyes narrowed slightly. But, Olivia continued, her voice steady, "Alexander and I have been discussing something important. He wants to legally adopt Sophia." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marco's face went through a range of emotions, surprise, anger, hurt, before settling into a hard mask. "Adopt her?" he said, his voice low and tight. "You mean take my place as her father?" Olivia shook her head. "No one can take your place as Sophia's biological father, Marco, but Alexander has been there for her every day for months now. He loves her like his own." Marco's fist clenched on the table. "And I don't? I'm her real father, Olivia. I may have made mistakes, but I'm here now. I'm trying." "I know you are," Olivia said softly, "and I'm not trying to diminish that. But this isn't about you or me or Alexander. It's about what's best for Sophia." Marco let out a bitter laugh. "What's best for Sophia? And you think that's cutting me out of her life?" "No one's cutting you out," Olivia insisted. "You'd still be a part of her life, but Alexander would have legal rights and responsibilities. It would provide stability, security." "Stability?" Marco's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. He lowered it again, leaning in. "You mean the kind of stability his money can buy? Is that what this is about, Liv? You found yourself a rich husband and now you want to erase your past?" Olivia felt a flash of anger. "That's not fair, Marco. You know that's not what this is about." Marco ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to replace me with your perfect new family." "Marco, please," Olivia pleaded. "Try to understand. This isn't about replacing you. It's about giving Sophia the security of knowing that both the parents she lives with have legal rights to care for her." For a moment, Marco was quiet, his eyes focused on the table. When he looked up, there was a determination in his gaze that made Olivia's heart sink. "No," he said firmly, "I won't sign away my rights to my daughter. If Alexander wants to adopt her, he'll have to go through me in court." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "You'd put Sophia through a custody battle?" Marco stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "If that's what it takes to protect my relationship with my daughter, then yes. I'm not giving up without a fight, Olivia. You should know that by now." As he stormed out of the restaurant, Olivia sat frozen, her mind reeling. This was exactly what she had feared, what she had hoped to avoid. The thought of putting Sophia through a legal battle made her feel physically ill. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed Alexander's number. "Olivia?" His warm voice came through the speaker. "How did it go?" Olivia took a shuddering breath. "Not good, Alexander. Not good at all." As she explained what had happened, she could hear the tension building in Alexander's voice. "I'll call our lawyer," he said when she had finished. "We'll figure this out, Olivia. I promise." Back at the penthouse, Olivia found Alexander pacing in the living room, his phone to his ear. Sophia was at a friend's house for a sleepover, a small mercy given the storm that was brewing. "Yes, I understand," Alexander was saying. "Just let me know as soon as you have any updates." He hung up and turned to Olivia, pulling her into a tight embrace. "What did the lawyer say?" Olivia asked, her voice muffled against his chest. Alexander sighed. "It's complicated. Marco has been absent for most of Sophia's life, which works in our favor, but he's her biological father, and he's been making an effort recently. It could get messy." Olivia pulled back, looking up at Alexander with tear-filled eyes. "What have we done, Alexander? Are we being selfish? Maybe we should just leave things as they are." Alexander cupped her face gently. "Olivia, listen to me. We're not being selfish. We're trying to do what's best for Sophia. Having legal security, knowing that both her parents at home have equal rights to care for her, that's important. But at what cost?" Olivia whispered. "I don't want to put her through a custody battle. I don't want her to feel torn between you and Marco." Alexander was quiet for a moment, his thumbs gently wiping away Olivia's tears. Maybe we need to talk to Sophia about this. She's young, but she's also incredibly perceptive. We should at least explain what's happening and see how she feels." Olivia nodded, feeling a small measure of relief at the suggestion. "You're right. She deserves to have a say in this. It's her life we're deciding, after all." As they stood there, holding each other in the quiet of their home, both Olivia and Alexander felt the weight of the decision before them. They had started this journey with the best intentions, wanting to solidify their family and provide Sophia with security. But now, faced with the prospect of a legal battle and the potential emotional toll on Sophia, they were forced to question everything. The next day, when Sophia returned from her sleepover, bubbling with stories about her night away, Olivia and Alexander exchanged a look. They had agreed to wait a day before bringing up the subject, wanting Sophia to have one more day of uncomplicated happiness. As they went about their Sunday routine, pancakes for breakfast, a trip to the park, family movie night, both Olivia and Alexander found themselves watching Sophia closely. Her laughter as she swung higher and higher on the swings, her concentration as she colored in her latest masterpiece, her sleepy contentment as she curled up between them on the couch. Every moment felt precious, tinged with the knowledge of the difficult conversation to come. That night, after tucking Sophia into bed, Olivia and Alexander stood in the hallway, both reluctant to leave. "Are we doing the right thing?" Olivia whispered, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at her all day. Alexander pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know that we love Sophia more than anything in this world. Whatever happens, whatever we decide, that love will guide us." As they retreated to their bedroom, both lost in thought about the challenges that lay ahead, neither of them noticed the small figure that had crept to the doorway of Sophia's room. Sophia stood there, her stuffed penguin clutched tightly to her chest, her young mind trying to make sense of the worry she had sensed in her parents all day. She didn't know what was coming, but she knew one thing for certain. She loved her mom, her dad Alexander, and even Marco, in her own way. And she hoped, with all the fierce determination of a 7-year-old, that love would be enough to keep her family together, no matter what. The morning light filtered through the curtains of the Blackwood penthouse, casting a soft glow over the family gathered in the living room. Olivia and Alexander sat on the couch, with Sophia between them, her small form dwarfed by the plush cushions. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a stark contrast to their usual weekend morning routine. "Sweetheart," Olivia began, her voice gentle, "Daddy Alexander and I need to talk to you about something important. It's about our family and Marco." Sophia looked up, her big brown eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. "Is everything okay, Mommy? Did I do something wrong?" Alexander quickly shook his head, placing a comforting hand on Sophia's shoulder. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. We just need to discuss some grown-up things that might affect our family." Olivia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "Sophia, you know how much Daddy Alexander loves you, right? And how he takes care of you just like I do." Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, Daddy Alexander is the best. He helps me with my homework and makes funny voices when he reads bedtime stories." Alexander felt a lump form in his throat at Sophia's words. Olivia continued, her voice soft but steady. "That's right, and because he loves you so much, Daddy Alexander wants to adopt you. Do you know what that means?" Sophia's brow furrowed in concentration. "Like when people adopt puppies from the shelter, they become their forever family." Alexander couldn't help but smile at her innocence. "That's a great way to think about it, Sophia. It means that legally I would be your dad forever, no matter what happens." For a moment, Sophia's face lit up with joy. But then a shadow of confusion crossed her features. "But what about Marco? Isn't he my dad too?" Olivia and Alexander exchanged a glance, the weight of the situation settling heavily between them. "Yes, sweetie," Olivia said carefully. "Marco is your biological father. That won't change. But if Daddy Alexander adopts you, it means he would have the same legal rights as a parent that Marco and I have." Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing this information. When she spoke, her voice was small and uncertain. "Does that mean I have to choose? Between Daddy Alexander and Marco?" The pain in her voice was like a physical blow to both Olivia and Alexander. "No, sweetheart," Alexander said quickly, pulling Sophia into a gentle hug. "You don't have to choose. We all love you, and that's not going to change." Olivia leaned in, stroking Sophia's hair. "But honey, there's something else we need to tell you. Marco, he's not happy about the idea of Daddy Alexander adopting you. He might try to stop it from happening." Sophia's eyes widened, filling with tears. "Why, doesn't he want me to be happy?" Olivia felt her heart breaking at her daughter's distress. "Oh, sweetie, of course he does. He loves you very much. But sometimes grown-ups disagree about what's best, even when they all want the same thing, for you to be happy and loved." Alexander took a deep breath, knowing they needed to be honest with Sophia, even if it was difficult. "Sophia, There's a chance that this disagreement might turn into something called a custody battle. It means that lawyers and judges might get involved to decide what's best for you. Sophia's lower lip trembled. But why can't you all just decide together? Why does someone else have to choose? The simplicity and wisdom of her question struck both Olivia and Alexander. They shared a look, realizing that in their adult complexities, they might have overlooked the most straightforward solution. "You're right, Sophia," Olivia said softly. "Maybe we should try harder to work this out together for your sake." Alexander nodded, a new determination in his eyes. "We'll do our best to avoid putting you through any more stress, sweetheart. Your happiness is what matters most to all of us." Sophia looked between them, her young face serious. "I love you, Mommy. And I love you, Daddy Alexander. And I love Marco too, even if he wasn't here before. Can't we all just be a family together?" The innocence and purity of her wish brought tears to both Olivia and Alexander's eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," Olivia murmured, pulling Sophia close. We'll try our very best to make that happen." As they sat there, holding each other close, Alexander's mind was racing. Sophia's simple question had sparked an idea, one that might just offer a solution to their dilemma. Later that evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Olivia and Alexander sat on the balcony, processing the emotional conversation of the day. "I can't believe how mature she is," Olivia said softly, her eyes still red from crying. "The way she just wanted everyone to get along." Alexander nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It made me realize something, Olivia. Maybe we've been approaching this all wrong." Olivia looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "What if," Alexander began slowly, "instead of fighting Marco for full adoption rights, we propose a different solution? What if we look into something like shared custody or guardianship?" Olivia's eyes widened as she considered the possibility. "You mean legally recognize both you and Marco as Sophia's fathers?" Alexander nodded. "It's not a perfect solution, and I'm not sure if it's even legally possible. But it might be a way to give Sophia the stability she needs without completely cutting Marco out of the picture." Olivia was quiet for a moment, mulling over the idea. "It would be complicated," she said finally, "and I'm not sure how Marco would react, but it might be worth exploring." Alexander took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I know it's not what we originally planned, and believe me, there's a part of me that still wants to fight for full adoption. But seeing Sophia today, hearing her wish for all of us to be a family, it made me realize that maybe there's a better way." Olivia leaned into him, feeling a mix of emotions, hope, uncertainty, and a deep love for the man beside her who was willing to consider such a selfless solution. "We'll need to talk to our lawyer," she said, "and to Marco it won't be easy." Alexander pressed a kiss to her temple. "No, it won't. But if it gives Sophia the family she deserves, all of us working together for her benefit, then it's worth it." As they sat there looking out over the glittering city skyline, both Olivia and Alexander felt a sense of cautious optimism. The path ahead was still uncertain, fraught with potential pitfalls and challenges, but they had a new direction now, guided by the pure, loving heart of the little girl who had brought them all together. Inside, Sophia slept peacefully, unaware of the impact her simple wish had made. In her dreams, she saw a future where all the people she loved were together, smiling and happy. And somehow, in the wisdom of her innocent heart, she knew that love would find a way to make it happen. The law office of Jameson and Associates exuded an air of quiet professionalism, with its polished wooden surfaces and muted color palette. Olivia and Alexander sat side by side across from their lawyer, Patricia Jameson, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had been guiding them through the legal intricacies of their situation. "Let me get this straight," Patricia said, leaning back in her chair. "Instead of pursuing full adoption, you want to explore the possibility of a shared custody arrangement with Marco, one that would legally recognize both Alexander and Marco as Sophia's fathers." Alexander nodded, his hand finding Olivia's and giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We know it's unconventional, but after talking with Sophia, we believe it might be the best solution for everyone involved." Patricia's brow furrowed as she considered their proposal. "It's certainly not a common arrangement, but it's not entirely without precedent. There have been cases of tri-parenting recognized by the courts, though they're rare and often complex." Olivia leaned forward, her voice filled with determination. "We're willing to face the complexity if it means avoiding a drawn-out custody battle. Sophia deserves to have all the people who love her in her life without feeling torn between them." The lawyer nodded slowly, a hint of admiration in her eyes. "It's a noble goal, and I commend you both for putting Sophia's needs first. However, you need to be prepared for the challenges ahead. This won't be a simple process." As Patricia outlined the potential legal hurdles they would face, from drafting a comprehensive custody agreement to potentially setting new legal precedents, Olivia and Alexander listened intently, the weight of their decisions settling on their shoulders. "And of course," Patricia added, her tone cautious, "all of this hinges on Marco's willingness to cooperate. Have you discussed this idea with him yet?" Alexander and Olivia exchanged a glance. "Not yet," Alexander admitted. "We wanted to understand the legal implications first, but we're planning to reach out to him soon." Patricia nodded. "I suggest you do so carefully. Given his initial reaction to the adoption proposal, he may be skeptical of any new suggestions. It might be helpful to have a neutral third party present for that conversation, perhaps a family mediator." As they left the law office, stepping out into the busy New York street, Olivia felt a mix of hope and apprehension swirling in her chest. "Do you think Marco will even consider this?" she asked softly. Alexander wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as they walked. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but we have to try, for Sophia's sake." The next few days were a flurry of activity as they prepared for their meeting with Marco. They enlisted the help of a respected family mediator, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who agreed to host the discussion at her office. On the day of the meeting, Olivia found herself pacing nervously in Dr. Rodriguez's waiting room, while Alexander sat quietly, his usual calm demeanor tinged with tension. When Marco arrived, his face was a mask of wary curiosity. "All right," he said, taking a seat across from them. "I'm here. What's this all about?" Dr. Rodriguez introduced herself and explained her role before turning the floor over to Olivia and Alexander. With a deep breath, Olivia began to outline their proposal. As she spoke, Marco's expression shifted from skepticism to disbelief, to a complex mix of emotions that was hard to decipher. When she finished, a heavy silence filled the room. "Let me get this straight," Marco said finally, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "You want me to agree to share custody of my daughter with him?" He jerked his head towards Alexander. Alexander leaned forward, his voice calm but earnest. "Marco, I know this is a lot to take in, but we're not trying to take Sophia away from you. We're offering a chance for all of us to be part of her life, legally and emotionally." Marco let out a bitter laugh. "And I'm supposed to believe that? After you tried to adopt her behind my back?" Olivia flinched at the accusation, but Dr. Rodriguez smoothly intervened. "Perhaps we could take a step back and discuss what each of you wants for Sophia's future. What are your primary concerns and hopes for her?" As the conversation progressed, guided by Dr. Rodriguez's skilled mediation, the tension in the room gradually began to ease. Marco spoke of his regret for the years he'd missed and his desperate desire to be a real father to Sophia. Alexander shared his love for the little girl who had stolen his heart and his commitment to her well-being. And Olivia, tears in her eyes, talked about her dream of giving Sophia a stable, loving family, one that included all the people who cared for her. By the end of the session, while no firm decisions had been made, a tentative understanding had been reached. Marco agreed to consider the proposal and to meet again to discuss the details further. As they left Dr. Rodriguez's office, Marco pulled Olivia aside. "Liv," he said softly, "I need you to know, I'm not trying to disrupt your life. I just want to be there for Sophia." Olivia nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "I know, Marco, that's all any of us want." Over the next few weeks, a delicate dance began as the three adults in Sophia's life worked to navigate their new reality. There were more meetings with lawyers and mediators, long discussions about parenting philosophies and future plans, and moments of both progress and setback. Through it all, Sophia remained at the center of their efforts. They agreed to be honest with her about the process, explaining in age-appropriate terms what they were trying to do. One evening, as Olivia tucked Sophia into bed, the little girl looked up at her with those wise brown eyes. "Mommy," she said softly, "are you and Daddy Alexander and Marco all going to be my family now?" Olivia smoothed back Sophia's curls, her heart full of love. "We're trying, sweetheart. We're all working very hard to make that happen." Sophia nodded solemnly. "Good," she said, "because I have enough love for everybody." As Olivia relayed this conversation to Alexander later that night, they both felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path they had chosen was far from easy, filled with legal complexities and emotional hurdles. But with Sophia's pure loving heart as their guide, they knew they were moving in the right direction. The journey ahead would be challenging. There would be difficult conversations, moments of doubt and hurdles to overcome. But as Olivia and Alexander stood on their balcony, looking out over the city they called home, they felt a sense of hope for the future. "We're doing the right thing," Alexander said softly, pulling Olivia close. She nodded, leaning into his embrace. "It won't be easy," she murmured. "No," he agreed. "But the best things in life rarely are." As they stood there wrapped in each other's arms, they both silently renewed their commitment to Sophia, to each other, and to the unconventional but loving family they were working to build. The road ahead might be long and winding, but with love as their compass, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The autumn air was crisp as Olivia stood outside Sophia's school, her breath forming small clouds in the cool morning. She checked her watch, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation churning in her stomach. Today was the first day of their new custody arrangement, and Marco would be picking Sophia up from school. As the bell rang and children began pouring out of the building, Olivia spotted Sophia's familiar curls bouncing as she ran towards her. "Mommy!" Sophia called out, throwing her arms around Olivia's waist. "Is Marco here yet?" Olivia smoothed her daughter's hair, forcing a smile. "Not yet, sweetheart, but he should be here soon." As if on cue, Marco's car pulled up to the curb. He stepped out, looking slightly out of place in his work clothes among the sea of nannies and stay-at-home parents. "Hey, Munchkin," he called out, a broad smile on his face as Sophia ran to hug him. Olivia approached, her posture stiff but polite. "Hi, Marco. Remember, she has soccer practice at 4, and she needs to finish her science project tonight." Marco nodded, a flicker of irritation passing over his face. "I got it, Liv. We went over this yesterday." Sophia looked between them, her smile faltering slightly. Olivia quickly knelt down to her level. "Have a great time with Marco, sweetie. I'll see you tomorrow after school, okay?" As she watched Marco's car drive away, Sophia waving from the back seat, Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. This was what they had agreed to, what was best for Sophia, but it didn't make it any easier to watch her daughter leave with someone else. Back at the penthouse, Alexander was waiting, a comforting presence as Olivia walked through the door. "How did it go?" he asked softly, pulling her into a hug. Olivia sighed, melting into his embrace. "It was okay." Sophia seemed excited. "I just hope Marco remembers everything." Alexander pulled back slightly, meeting her eyes. "He will, and if he doesn't, we'll figure it out. That's what co-parenting is all about, right?" Olivia nodded, grateful for his steady support. As they moved into the kitchen to prepare dinner, the penthouse felt strangely quiet without Sophia's usual chatter and laughter. Meanwhile, across town, Marco was experiencing his own mix of emotions as he helped Sophia with her homework. "So the water cycle starts with evaporation, right?" he asked, peering at her science textbook. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Uh-huh. And then it goes up into the clouds, and that's called condensation." Marco grinned, ruffling her hair. "Look at you, smarty pants. You get your brains from your old man, you know." Sophia giggled, but then her face grew serious. "Marco, can I ask you something?" "Sure, kiddo, what's up?" Sophia fidgeted with her pencil. "Why weren't you around before?" "When I was little." Marco felt his heart drop. He had known this question would come eventually, but he still wasn't prepared for it. Taking a deep breath, he turned to face Sophia fully. "That's a really good question, Munchkin. And the truth is, I made some big mistakes. I was young and scared, and I didn't know how to be a good dad. But I want you to know that it was never because of you. You were always perfect." Sophia considered this, her young face thoughtful. "But you're here now," she said finally. Marco nodded, blinking back tears. "That's right. And I promise you, Sophia, I'm not going anywhere ever again." As they hugged, Marco felt a fierce surge of love and protectiveness. He was determined to make up for lost time, to be the father Sophia deserved. The next few weeks brought a series of adjustments and learning experiences for everyone involved. There were mix-ups with schedules, disagreements over parenting styles, and moments of tension as they all navigated their new roles. One particularly challenging day came when Sophia caught a cold. She was supposed to be with Marco, but he had an important work meeting he couldn't reschedule. After a flurry of phone calls and some tense negotiations, it was agreed that Alexander would take care of Sophia for the day. As Alexander sat by Sophia's bedside, reading her favorite story for the third time that morning, he felt a deep sense of contentment despite the circumstances. This, he realized, was what being a parent was all about, being there no matter what. When Marco came to pick Sophia up that evening, there was an awkward moment as he and Alexander stood in the foyer. "Thanks," Marco said gruffly, "for taking care of her today." Alexander nodded. "Of course. She's feeling much better now. I left some cold medicine in her backpack just in case." As Marco turned to leave, Sophia's voice called out from her room. "Daddy Alexander, aren't you going to say goodbye?" Both men froze, the weight of Sophia's words hanging between them. Then slowly a small smile tugged at Marco's lips. "Yeah, Alexander. Aren't you going to say goodbye?" It was a tiny moment, but it felt like a shift in their dynamic. A small acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, there was room for both of them in Sophia's life. As the weeks turned into months, a new normal began to emerge. Family dinners became a regular occurrence with all four adults and Sophia gathered around the table. There were still moments of tension and disagreement, but there was also laughter, shared stories, and a growing sense of unity. One evening, as Olivia watched Sophia sandwiched between Alexander and Marco on the couch, both men completely engrossed in her explanation of her latest art project, she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This wasn't the family she had imagined, but it was beautiful in its own unique way. Alexander caught her eye from across the room, a question in his gaze. She smiled, mouthing "I love you" silently. His face softened, returning the sentiment with a gentle nod. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Olivia turned to Alexander. "Do you ever wonder how we got here?" she asked softly. "If someone had told me a year ago that this would be our life." Alexander pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I know. It's not conventional and it's not always easy, but seeing Sophia today, how happy she is, I wouldn't change it for the world." Olivia nodded, snuggling into his embrace. "Me neither," she whispered. As they drifted off to sleep, Olivia's last thoughts were of the family they had built. Unconventional, sometimes messy, but filled with love. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And for Sophia, they would make it work, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In her room down the hall, Sophia slept peacefully, her dreams filled with images of all the people she loved, her mom, her two dads, and the family they were becoming. In her innocent wisdom, she knew that love came in many forms, and she was lucky enough to have an abundance of it in her life. The crisp autumn air had given way to the biting chill of early winter in New York City. Inside the warm cocoon of the Blackwood penthouse, Olivia sat at the kitchen island, nursing a cup of coffee and scrolling through her emails. Her eyes widened as she opened a message from Sophia's school. "Alexander," she called out, her voice tinged with excitement. "Come look at this." Alexander appeared from his home office, reading glasses perched on his nose. "What is it?" Olivia turned the tablet towards him, her face beaming. "Sophia's been selected to represent her class in the citywide Young Scientists Fair. They want her to present her project on urban beekeeping." Alexander's face lit up with pride. "That's fantastic. Our little girl, the scientist. When is it?" Olivia's smile faltered slightly as she read further. It's on the weekend of your father's annual charity gala." The air in the room seemed to thicken with tension. Richard Blackwood's charity gala was a high-profile event that Alexander was expected to attend, especially given the recent tensions with the board over his new initiatives. "We'll make it work," Alexander said firmly. "Sophia's achievement is important. I'll talk to my father, explain the situation." As they discussed logistics, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Marco. "I just got the email about Sophia's science fair. That's my weekend with her. I was planning to take her to visit my parents upstate." Olivia and Alexander exchanged a look. This was exactly the kind of situation that tested their new family dynamic. We should call a family meeting, Olivia suggested, all of us including Sophia. This is her moment after all. That evening, the unlikely family gathered in the living room. Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes wide with anticipation, as the adults explained the situation. "So," Alexander began gently, "we have a bit of a scheduling conflict, sweetheart. Your science fair is the same weekend as a few other important events. We want to know what you think." Sophia's brow furrowed in concentration. "Well, I really want to show my project. I've worked so hard on it." Marco leaned forward, his expression serious. "I know you were excited about meeting your grandparents, Munchkin. We can reschedule that if the science fair is more important to you." Sophia nodded slowly, then looked up at Alexander. "But what about your fancy party, Daddy Alexander? Won't your dad be mad if you don't go?" Alexander felt a surge of emotion at Sophia's concern for him. He knelt down to her level, taking her small hands in his. "Don't you worry about that, sweetheart. Your accomplishments are more important to me than any party." Olivia watched the interaction, her heart swelling with love for her unconventional family. "What if," she suggested, "we all attend the science fair together, and then maybe we can find a way to stop by the gala afterwards, just for a little while?" The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before Sophia's face broke into a wide grin. "Really? Everyone would come to see my project?" Marco and Alexander exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. "Of course," they said in unison. As they ironed out the details, with Marco agreeing to reschedule his parents' visit and Alexander promising to talk to his father, Olivia marveled at how far they'd come. A year ago, such a negotiation would have seemed impossible. The day of the science fair arrived, bringing with it a flurry of activity. Sophia was a bundle of nervous energy as they helped her set up her display, complete with a small observation hive, sans bees for safety reasons, and detailed charts of honey production rates. As other families began to arrive, Olivia couldn't help but notice the curious glances thrown their way. It wasn't every day you saw a young girl flanked by her mother and two fathers, all beaming with equal pride. Sophia's presentation was a hit. She spoke with confidence and enthusiasm, fielding questions from judges and fellow students alike. When she was awarded first place in her age group, the cheers from her family were the loudest in the room. As they prepared to leave for the gala, Marco pulled Alexander aside. "Listen," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. "I know we've had our differences, but thank you for being there for Sophia, for supporting her like this." Alexander was taken aback by the unexpected olive branch. He nodded, extending his hand. "She's an amazing kid. We're all lucky to have her in our lives." The gala was in full swing by the time they arrived, the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton glittering with New York's elite. Richard Blackwood's eyebrows shot up as he saw the unconventional group approach. "Alexander," he said, his voice tight, "I was beginning to think you weren't coming." Alexander stood tall, his arm around Sophia's shoulders. "Father, I'd like you to meet someone very special. This is Sophia, my daughter. She just won first place in the citywide Young Scientists Fair." Richard's gaze softened almost imperceptibly as he looked at the beaming little girl. "Is that so? Well, congratulations, young lady. Perhaps you'd like to tell me about your project." As Sophia launched into an enthusiastic explanation of urban beekeeping, with Olivia, Alexander, and even Marco chiming in, the tension in the air began to dissipate. Other guests gathered around, drawn by Sophia's infectious excitement and the unusual family dynamic on display. Later that evening, as they all piled into the elevator of the Blackwood penthouse, exhausted but happy, Olivia felt a sense of triumph. They had faced a challenging situation and come through it stronger than ever. "I'm proud of us," she said softly, looking around at her family. "All of us." Alexander squeezed her hand, while Marco nodded in agreement. Sophia, half asleep but still clutching her science fair ribbon, mumbled, "We're the best family ever." As they tucked Sophia into bed that night, with all three parents taking turns to kiss her goodnight, Olivia realized that they had crossed an important threshold. They weren't just coexisting or tolerating each other for Sophia's sake anymore. They were truly becoming a family, unconventional as it might be. The road ahead would still have its challenges. There would be more scheduling conflicts, more moments of tension, more curious looks from outsiders. But they had proven to themselves and to the world that they could face those challenges together. As Olivia and Alexander settled into bed, both physically and emotionally drained from the day's events, Alexander turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for my father's meddling. If he hadn't pushed us together with that arranged marriage scheme," Olivia chuckled, snuggling closer to him, "we'd never have found this crazy, beautiful family of ours." They fell asleep in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that love, in all its forms, was the strongest foundation a family could have. And in their penthouse in the sky, surrounded by the glittering lights of New York City, their unconventional family had found its own unique, happily ever after. The New York spring was in full bloom, cherry blossoms dotting the parks, and a renewed energy pulsing through the city streets. In the Blackwood penthouse, Olivia stood on the balcony, a cup of coffee warming her hands as she looked out over the awakening city. It was hard to believe that exactly 1 year had passed since she had first stepped into this very apartment, a nervous bride in an arranged marriage. The sound of laughter drifted from inside, pulling her from her reverie. She turned to see Alexander chasing Sophia around the living room, both still in their pajamas, their faces alight with joy. The sight warmed her heart in a way she never could have imagined a year ago. "Mom, save me!" Sophia giggled, darting behind Olivia's legs as Alexander approached with exaggerated monster steps. "Oh no," Alexander growled playfully. "The monster's kryptonite. A beautiful mother's love," Olivia laughed, scooping Sophia up into her arms. "All right, you two, how about some breakfast before we finish setting up for the party?" As they moved to the kitchen, Olivia marveled at how natural it all felt now. The easy domesticity, the shared laughter, the love that filled every corner of their home. It hadn't been an easy journey, but every challenge had been worth it to reach this point. The day progressed in a flurry of activity as they prepared for the evening's celebration. It had been Sophia's idea to have a family anniversary party, marking 1 year since their lives had intertwined in such an unexpected way. As afternoon turned to evening, guests began to arrive. Marco was among the first, carrying a large gift box for Sophia and a bouquet of flowers that he somewhat awkwardly presented to Olivia. "For the hostess," he mumbled, a hint of the old Marco peeking through his now more mature demeanor. "Thanks for everything." Olivia accepted the flowers with a genuine smile. "Thank you, Marco. I'm glad you're here." The penthouse soon filled with an eclectic mix of people. Olivia's old friends from the diner rubbed elbows with Alexander's business associates. Sophia's teachers chatted with Marco's cousins, and in the center of it all was Sophia, flitting from group to group, her face glowing with happiness. As the evening wore on, Alexander clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he began, his voice carrying across the room, "to family, not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose and the one that chooses us." He looked around the room, his gaze lingering on Olivia, Sophia, and even Marco. "A year ago, if someone had told me this is where I'd be, I wouldn't have believed them. But standing here now, I can't imagine being anywhere else." Olivia felt tears prick at her eyes as Alexander continued. "To Olivia, the strongest, most compassionate woman I know, you've taught me what true partnership means." He turned to Sophia. "To our brilliant Sophia, whose heart is big enough to love us all and whose wisdom often surpasses our own." Then, to everyone's surprise, he addressed Marco. "And to Marco, who had the courage to come back and be the father Sophia deserves. Your presence in our family has made us all grow in ways we never expected." As glasses clinked and cheers erupted, Olivia found herself overwhelmed with emotion. She excused herself, slipping out onto the balcony for a moment of quiet reflection. She hadn't been there long when she felt a presence beside her. Turning, she saw Richard Blackwood, Alexander's father, looking uncharacteristically contemplative. "It's quite a gathering you have in there," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Olivia nodded, unsure of how to respond. Her relationship with Richard had been strained at best over the past year. "I owe you an apology, Olivia," Richard continued, surprising her. "When I arranged this marriage, I had other motives. I thought I was teaching Alexander a lesson. Instead, you've both taught me one." Olivia turned to face him fully, seeing a vulnerability in the older man's eyes that she'd never noticed before. "I've watched my son change this past year," Richard said softly. "He's become the man I always hoped he'd be. but not in the way I expected. And that's largely thanks to you and that remarkable little girl of yours." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Richard. That means a lot." Inside, the party continued in full swing. Sophia had convinced Marco and Alexander to join her in a rather uncoordinated dance, much to the amusement of the other guests. The sight of the two men, once rivals, now awkwardly attempting to follow Sophia's lead, was both hilarious and heartwarming. As Olivia rejoined the party, she found herself taking mental snapshots of the moment. Mrs. Gonzalez, her former neighbor, deep in conversation with one of Alexander's board members. Jess from the diner, showing off pictures of her new baby to a group of cooing admirers. And in the center of it all, her family. Unconventional, sometimes messy, but filled with more love than she ever thought possible. Later that night, after the last guest had left, and Sophia had been tucked into bed, Olivia and Alexander stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Olivia mused, leaning into Alexander's embrace. He chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "In some ways, it feels like it's been much longer. In others, like it was just yesterday that you walked into my life and turned everything upside down." Olivia turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. Alexander's response was immediate and heartfelt. "Not a single one. You and Sophia. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The arranged marriage that had blossomed into real love, the challenges they'd faced and overcome together, the family they'd built, piece by piece, with love and patience and understanding. It wasn't the life she had imagined for herself a year ago. It was better, richer, fuller. As the city hummed below them and the stars twinkled above, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged, in this home, with this man, and the beautiful blended family they had created together. The future was still unwritten, sure to bring its own set of challenges and joys. But whatever came their way, Olivia knew they would face it as they had everything else, together bound by a love that had grown from the most unexpected of beginnings. In Sophia's room, the little girl slept peacefully, her dreams filled with images of the day's celebration. In her young mind, there was nothing unusual about her family. It was simply hers, filled with people who loved her and each other. And in the innocent wisdom of childhood, she knew that was all that really mattered. As midnight approached, marking the official end of their family anniversary, Olivia and Alexander shared a tender kiss. It was a kiss that spoke of love, of gratitude, of a future filled with promise. A kiss that sealed the journey of the past year and opened the door to all the adventures yet to come. In that moment, under the vast New York sky, their story had come full circle, but really they all knew it was just the beginning. The early morning sun streamed through the windows of the Blackwood penthouse, casting a warm glow over the breakfast table. Olivia sat sipping her coffee, watching with amusement as Alexander attempted to braid Sophia's hair for school. Their daughter, now 8 years old, was patiently instructing him on the intricate process. "No, Daddy, you need to cross this piece over. No, the other one. There you go." Alexander's tongue poked out slightly in concentration, his fingers fumbling with the silky strands. It was a far cry from the polished businessman Olivia had first met 2 years ago, and the sight filled her heart with love. "There!" Alexander exclaimed triumphantly, securing the braid with a hair tie. "How's that, Princess?" Sophia examined her reflection in her pink compact mirror, a gift from Marco on her last birthday. "It's perfect. Thanks, Daddy." As Sophia skipped off to gather her backpack, Olivia stood and wrapped her arms around Alexander's waist. "You're getting better at that, you know," she murmured, pressing a kiss to his cheek. Alexander chuckled, turning to face her. "Well, I have an excellent teacher. Speaking of which, are we still on for dinner with Marco tonight?" "To discuss Sophia's school options for next year?" Olivia nodded, marveling at how easily they now navigated these co-parenting discussions. "Yes, he's meeting us at that new Italian place at 7. He mentioned bringing someone. I think he might be seeing someone new." Before Alexander could respond, Sophia bounced back into the kitchen. "I'm ready." "Oh, and don't forget, Parent Career Day is next week. Are you all coming?" Olivia and Alexander exchanged a glance, both remembering the complex negotiations that had gone into arranging this. "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia assured her. Daddy Alexander will talk about running the company, I'll discuss my work with the literacy program, and Marco will share about his graphic design job. Sophia beamed, her face alight with pride. I can't wait. My friends think it's so cool that I have 3 parents to talk about. As they headed out the door, Olivia couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. The journey hadn't been easy, but the result, this beautiful blended family, was worth every challenge they'd faced. The day passed in a whirlwind of activity. Olivia spent the morning at the community center, where she now ran a literacy program for underprivileged children, an initiative that had grown out of her volunteer work and was now supported by the Blackwood Foundation. Alexander was at the office, finalizing plans for a new eco-friendly tech initiative that had the board buzzing with excitement. That evening, they met Marco at the restaurant, a cozy Italian trattoria tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Marco wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a warm-faced woman named Eleanor, a fellow graphic designer he'd been seeing for a few months. As they settled into their seats, Olivia was struck by the easy camaraderie that now existed between them all. Marco and Alexander were discussing a recent soccer match, while Elena chatted with Olivia about the literacy program. It was a scene she never could have imagined 2 years ago. So, Marco said as their meals arrived, about Sophia's schooling next year. I've been doing some research on that STEM-focused academy she's interested in. They spent the next hour discussing options, weighing pros and cons, and ultimately coming to a decision they all felt good about. It wasn't always easy, this 3-way parenting dynamic, but they had learned to navigate it with respect and open communication. As they were finishing their desserts, Alexander's phone buzzed with a message. His eyes widened as he read it, a slow smile spreading across his face. Everything okay? Olivia asked, touching his arm gently. Alexander nodded, his eyes shining with excitement. More than okay. Remember that proposal we submitted to turn some of the company's unused properties into affordable housing? The board just approved it unanimously. A cheer went up from the table, drawing curious glances from other diners. Olivia felt a surge of pride. This project had been Alexander's passion for months, a way to give back to the community and make a real difference. As they left the restaurant, hugs and congratulations were exchanged all around. Marco and Elena headed off in one direction, while Olivia and Alexander strolled hand in hand towards home. You know, Alexander said softly as they walked, I was thinking about something my father said to me recently. He told me that watching our family come together, seeing how we've all grown and changed, it's made him rethink a lot of things. Olivia squeezed his hand encouragingly. Oh, Alexander nodded. He's talking about stepping down as CEO, letting me take over fully, but he also wants to start a family foundation focusing on supporting non-traditional families and children in need. Olivia felt tears prick at her eyes. Alexander, that's wonderful. Your father has come so far. We all have, Alexander murmured, pulling her close as they walked. Back at the penthouse, they found Sophia still awake, curled up on the couch with a book. As they tucked her into bed, Sophia looked up at them with those wise eyes that always seemed to see right through to the heart of things. I'm really lucky, aren't I? She said softly, to have so many people who love me. Olivia and Alexander exchanged a glance, both feeling the weight of that simple truth. We're the lucky ones, sweetheart, Olivia said, smoothing back Sophia's curls. You taught us all how to be a family. Later, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Olivia leaned into Alexander's embrace. Can you believe how much has changed in 2 years? She mused. Alexander chuckled, his breath warm against her hair. If someone had told me then that I'd be here now, married to an amazing woman, father to an incredible little girl, actually excited about the future of the company, I would have thought they were crazy. Olivia turned in his arms, meeting his gaze. And now, Alexander said softly, I can't imagine my life any other way. You and Sophia, you've given me more than I ever dreamed possible. A real family, a sense of purpose, love I never knew I was missing. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Olivia felt a sense of peace settle over her. The future stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility. There would be challenges, of course, raising a precocious daughter, navigating their unique family dynamic, balancing personal lives with professional ambitions. But they would face it all together, stronger for the journey they had already traveled. In Sophia's room, the little girl slept peacefully, her dreams filled with images of her large, loving family. On her nightstand stood a framed photo from their recent vacation, Olivia, Alexander, Marco and Sophia, all laughing together on a sunny beach. It was a snapshot of their unconventional but beautiful life, a testament to the power of love to create family in the most unexpected ways. As the city hummed below and the stars twinkled above, the Blackwood penthouse stood as a beacon of hope and love. Within its walls, a family born of arrangement had blossomed into something real and precious. It was a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful stories come from the most unlikely beginnings. And as Olivia and Alexander shared a tender kiss under the vast New York sky, they knew that their story, the story of their family, was far from over. It was in many ways just beginning. With love as their foundation and understanding as their guide, they were ready to face whatever new horizons awaited them together.